You have been taught that the world is coherent, that history follows a line, that science seeks truth, that your mind is your own. It is not. Every certainty you have ever held is a cage someone else built, and you have mistaken its bars for the shape of reality. Before we begin, you should understand. Once you start questioning, there is no way back to the comfort of not knowing. Look at your hands. Don't just glance stare. Follow the lines in the skin, the faint lattice of wrinkles, the tiny imperfections you normally ignore. Now consider this. Every cell you see is dead. The outer layer of your skin, the part you touch, the part others see, is a graveyard of lifeless keratin shells. Corpses forming a barrier between you and the world. You are wrapped in death, and you have called it you for your entire life without realizing. Already something has shifted, hasn't it? The word you suddenly feels unstable, less like a single entity and more like a story told by the brain to make sense of a messy collection of parts. Your hands are not truly yours in the way you think. They are constantly falling away, cell by cell, replaced in an endless silent shedding. In about a month, the skin you see now will no longer exist. You will not notice the moment it is gone, because the self you cling to is built on forgetting change, not noticing it. Your eyes, the ones now reading this, don't actually see the world. They are wet sensors, translating light into signals, which your brain reassembles into an image that exists only in your head. No one sees the real world. You see an internal simulation, a hallucination your mind has agreed to call reality. It is astonishingly convincing, but it is not direct contact with truth. It is a filtered, compressed, color-corrected projection designed for survival, not for accuracy. Consider the inattentional blindness experiments. In 1999, psychologists Daniel Simons and Christopher Chebris asked participants to watch a video of people passing basketballs and count the passes. Midway through, a person in a gorilla suit walked through the scene, paused, beat their chest, and walked away. About half of the viewers never saw it. Not because the gorilla wasn't visible, but because the brain discarded it as irrelevant to the assigned task. This means you do not merely miss details, you literally fail to see them, even when they are right in front of you. If your senses are this unreliable, what does it mean to trust your own perception? You think you see the world, but what you really see is the world filtered through the bottleneck of your mind's attention. And here is the deeper fracture. You do not control that bottleneck as much as you think you do. Look at history. People once believed the sun revolved around the earth, not because they were stupid, but because every sensory experience suggested it was true. The sky seemed to move. The ground did not. We laugh at them now, but what falsehoods do you believe? Just as deeply, simply because all your senses agree on the lie? When Galileo looked through his telescope and saw the moons of Jupiter, it was not just an astronomical revelation, it was an existential wound. It proved that human senses could be deceived, that what we know about the universe could be rewritten overnight. The church resisted, not because the idea was logically impossible, but because it was psychologically intolerable. If our eyes and common sense could be wrong about the structure of the cosmos, what else might be wrong? You live in that same fragility. Your senses tell you that objects are solid, that the table in front of you is continuous matter. But in physics, the table is almost entirely empty space. The atoms that compose it are mostly void, with a tiny nucleus surrounded by electrons that don't orbit like planets, but exist in probability clouds mathematical smears of where they might be if you measured them. The sensation of solidity is just electromagnetic repulsion between atoms, a force field your brain interprets as touch. You have never actually touched anything in your life. Even your sense of time is unreliable. Neuroscientists know that the brain processes events at different speeds, stitching them into a coherent flow after the fact. The now you experience is already past. You live your life with a delay of milliseconds, but your mind smooths over the gap, making you believe you are in the present. You are always chasing a moment that has already slipped away. Here's the first real question you must face, and it is not philosophical, it is personal. If you cannot trust your senses, your attention, your sense of time, or even your concept of you, then what exactly is it that is perceiving this world right now? And if you can't answer that without lying to yourself, then how can you claim to know anything at all? Think back to your earliest memory. Fix it in your mind, the smells, the colors, the feeling. Perhaps it's a birthday party, a toy, the face of a parent bending toward you. Hold it there. Now understand, you are almost certainly remembering it wrong. Elizabeth Loftus, a cognitive psychologist, has spent decades proving how fragile and unreliable human memory is. In one experiment, she convinced people they had been lost in a shopping mall as children, an event that had never happened. Not just convinced, they remembered it vividly. They described the smell of popcorn, the feeling of panic, the clothing they wore. Their minds filled in details as if they had always been there. And once the false memory was planted, it was indistinguishable from the real ones. Your memories are not like photographs. They are more like stories rewritten every time you tell them. Each time you recall a memory, your brain reconstructs it from fragments, emotions, and current beliefs, then stores the altered version back again. Slowly, with each retelling, the memory drifts from the truth. By middle age, even the most vivid, events are likely to have been partially rewritten by the mind that stores them. This means the you think you are built on the narrative of your past is based on an unstable archive. You are the product of a library where the books rewrite themselves while you sleep. The moment you realize this, something should start to crumble. The sense that your life has been a fixed, continuous story. It has not. It is a shifting mosaic, constantly rearranging itself to preserve an illusion of identity. Neurologist Oliver Sacks wrote of patients who had lost the ability to form new memories. They lived in a permanent present, meeting the same doctor dozens of times and greeting him each time as if for the first time. Their sense of self eroded because without memory, the illusion of continuity shatters. But here's the question: if your memories are inaccurate, unstable, and mutable, how different are you from them? Even the act of remembering is dangerous. Consider flashbulb memories, those vivid, seemingly indelible recollections of shocking events, like 9/11s or the death of a loved one. People swear they remember exactly where they were, what they were doing. Yet when psychologists check these memories years later, they are often riddled with inaccuracies. And yet the confidence remains. The mind clings to falsehoods with the same force it clings to truth. And then there are the memories you never had in the first place, ancestral echoes embedded in your DNA. Epigenetic studies on mice have shown that trauma can pass chemically through generations, altering behavior in offspring who have never experienced the original event. You may carry in your body the shadows of fears that were never yours. That shiver at certain sounds, that irrational aversion to certain places. It may not come from your life at all, but from someone else's long dead, whose pain still shapes you. History is no more trustworthy. You believe the record of the past is a stable foundation for understanding the present. It is not. Nations erase their own crimes. Documents are altered. Artifacts are misinterpreted or deliberately hidden. The burning of the Library of Alexandria was not an isolated tragedy, was one example in a long chain of deliberate erasures. Every empire has rewritten its story to make itself the hero. What you call history is a curated hallucination agreed upon by the survivors. If memory is flawed at the personal level, and history is flawed at the collective level, then what are you building your reality on? A scaffolding of edited fragments and agreed upon lies? You might say, but some memories must be real. I was there. But were you? Neuroscience suggests that even your sense of having experienced something is reconstructed in the brain. When you imagine the future, the same neural networks activate as when you recall the past. The distinction between remembering and imagining is thin and easily blurred. Think about this. In every moment, your brain is simulating possible futures, editing past events to fit the present, and blending both into a story called now. The truth is that you are not living in reality. You are living in a mental fiction, updated in real time, but with no stable anchor dot. So here is the second question that will not leave you alone. If every memory you have is unstable, altered, or borrowed, then what makes you so certain you have lived the life you think you have? And if you cannot be certain of that, then who exactly has been living it? You measure your life in hours, days, years, as if these were fixed, objective quantities, a ruler against which reality is measured. But time is not a straight line. It is not even the same for everyone. And the more you understand this, the less sense your life will make. Einstein shattered the illusion of universal time with relativity. Time moves differently depending on your speed and your position in a gravitational field. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station age more slowly than you by fractions of a second, simply because they are moving faster and are further from Earth's gravity well. You think of this as science fiction, but it is not. It's physics. Time literally passes differently for them. Two people can be born at the same moment, live the same number of years, and yet die at different ages according to the clocks they carried through space-time. But the distortion isn't just cosmic, it is personal. Your brain measures time subjectively, and it bends easily. A single minute in agony can feel like an eternity, while hours lost in flow vanish as if they never happened. In moments of danger, when adrenaline floods your system, perception sharpens, and time slows. This is not time slowing in reality. It is your brain recording more data per second, stretching the moment in your memory. Your life is not measured in equal slices. It is measured in bursts of awareness, some expanded, others compressed into nothingness. Then there is the phenomenon of chronostasis. Have you ever glanced at a clock and felt the second hand freeze? For an instant, it is not the clock, it is your brain. When you shift your gaze, your mind edits your perception to create a smooth experience, inserting the moment you missed into the past. You are living inside an edited stream, and the edits happen before you are even aware of them. Consider déjà vu, that eerie sense of having lived a moment before. It is often caused by a tiny delay between the two pathways your brain uses to process the same sensory input. One pathway delivers the signal a fraction of a second late, and your mind interprets it as a memory instead of the present. In other words, déjà vu is a glitch in the machinery of now. Cultures have not always agreed on what time is. Many ancient societies saw time not as a line, but as a cycle. The Mayans, Hindus, and Greeks envisioned repeating ages, endless rises, and falls where nothing truly began or ended. In Hindu cosmology, the universe is destroyed and reborn in infinite cycles, each lasting billions of years. In the Stoic view, everything will happen again, exactly as before, endlessly. If they are right, you are not just trapped in your life, you are trapped in it forever. Physics has a more brutal question. If the fundamental laws of the universe are reversible, if equations describing motion and energy work the same forward and backward, then why does time appear to move only one way? The arrow of time is tied to entropy, the tendency for order to decay into disorder. But if the universe ever contracts instead of expanding, entropy would reverse. From your perspective, time itself might run backward, and you would have no way of knowing. you would remember the future instead of the past, and you would call it the past. Memory makes you think the past is fixed, but the past is no more accessible than the future. In quantum mechanics, the transactional interpretation suggests that particles can exchange information backward in time, meaning the present may be influenced by events that have not yet happened. If that is true, then some of your choices may already have been shaped by futures you have not lived yet. You live inside a small, human-scale illusion of time, like an ant crawling across a spinning record. You believe the world is moving forward because your perspective is too limited to see the loops, the distortions, the reversals. And when you die, time will not stop. It will simply erase your witness to its strange geometry dot. So here is the third question you will carry. If time is relative, editable, and possibly reversible, then what exactly is the when in which you believe yourself to exist? And if you cannot define that, how can you ever be certain that this moment is real? You think you know what reality looks like. You picture the world outside your window, the faces of people you love, the familiar textures of home. But everything you have ever seen is a filtered hallucination, your brain's custom-built model of the universe, tuned for survival, not truth. Your eyes can detect only a narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, less than 1/10 trillionth of what is actually there. You call it visible light as if it were special, but it is just the tiny wavelength range your biology happens to process. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on flowers invisible to you. Pit vipers sense infrared heat maps. Mantis shrimp see 12 or more color channels to your 3, perceiving gradients and shades you cannot even imagine. To them, your vision would be a kind of blindness, and it's not just light. You are deaf to most of the world's sounds. Whales communicate in frequencies too low for you to hear. Bats in pitches too high. Your sense of smell is pitiful compared to a dog's, which can detect a teaspoon of sugar dissolved in an Olympic swimming pool. The world you inhabit is a wafer-thin slice of a much larger reality, yet you mistake it for the whole. Even what your senses do detect is distorted. Your brain takes raw sensory data and edits it before you're aware of it. It sharpens edges, fills in gaps, and corrects colors so that objects appear consistent under different lighting. This color constancy is why a white shirt looks white both in sunlight and under a yellow bulb. But in truth, the shirt is reflecting completely different wavelengths in each case. Your brain hides this fact from you because knowing the truth would be less useful than maintaining the illusion of stability. Then there's perceptual completion, your blind spot, where the optic nerve meets the retina, contains no light-sensing cells. You should see a hole in your vision, but you don't, because your brain fills it in with whatever it guesses should be there. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing your brain's best guess. The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that you can never experience the world as it is, the noumenon. You can only experience the phenomenon, the world, as your senses and mind interpret it. In other words, you live in a simulation, but not one built by machines. It is built by you, every second, whether you want it or not. Optical illusions reveal this construction process. Take the Muller-Lyer illusion: 2 lines of identical length, one with inward pointing arrows, one with outward. One line appears longer. You can know they are the same length. Measure them yourself, and still your brain will refuse to see them as equal. The model overrides the measurement. But illusions are not just tricks. They are the baseline. The neuroscientist Enel Seth describes perception as a controlled hallucination in which the brain constantly predicts sensory input and updates its model based on errors. You are not passively receiving reality. You are actively generating it, moment to moment, with sensory data acting as corrections to your guesses. And here is the part that should unsettle you. If your brain is hallucinating reality all the time, how would you ever know if it hallucinated something that wasn't there? Schizophrenic hallucinations use the same neural pathways as real perception. The difference is only in whether enough people agree on what's being perceived. Consensus, not truth, defines what you call real. If you could somehow peel away your sensory limitations and see the full electromagnetic spectrum, hear every frequency, smell every molecule, you would no longer recognize the world. The objects you know would dissolve into clouds of energy and probability, colors beyond imagination, shapes that stretch and warp in ways no human geometry can hold. You believe you are seeing reality. In truth, you are staring at a private hallucination that you have been trained since birth to share with those around you. So here's the fourth question you will not escape. If all you ever know is your brain's simulation, how can you be certain there is a reality beyond it? And if there isn't, who or what are you really living for? You wake each morning with the quiet assumption that your body belongs to you, that it is the physical anchor of your identity, the boundary between yourself and the world. But this is an illusion. You are not one being. You are a colony. Right. Now, more than half the cells in your body do not carry your DNA. They belong to bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea that live on and inside you. Your skin is an ecosystem. Your gut is a dense rainforest of microbial life, teeming with organisms that digest your food, regulate your immune system, and even influence your mood through chemical signals into your brain. Without them, you would die. They are not passengers, they are co-owners. This is the microbiome, and it challenges the idea of individuality. You are not a single organism, but a consortium of many, living together in uneasy cooperation. If you are the sum of your parts, then most of those parts aren't human. Your brain itself is not immune to foreign influence. Viruses like Toxoplasma gondii, carried by cats, can infect human hosts and subtly alter behavior, making some people more risk-prone, more reckless. Rabies rewires the brain into aggression and hydrophobia. Even the common flu has been linked to changes in decision-making and sociability. If a virus can change your personality, how much of yourself is truly self-determined? And then there is the immune system, a distributed intelligence that patrols your body like a separate mind, making decisions without your awareness. It remembers past infections, anticipates threats, and acts in ways that feel instinctive but are not directed by your conscious thought. When you crave rest during illness, that isn't you deciding, it's the immune system, commandeering your behavior for its own purposes. Your own cells are not loyal. Cancer begins when cells abandon the cooperative rules of the body and begin to replicate for themselves, consuming resources at the expense of the whole. It is a betrayal written into the fabric of life. If you were truly in control, you could stop them. You can't. Even at the genetic level, you are not purely human. Your genome contains fragments of ancient viruses, remnants of infections suffered by your distant ancestors that have been passed down and integrated into your DNA. These viral ghosts make up an estimated 8% of your genetic code. They are part of you, and yet they are not you. Your nervous system also blurs the line between self and world. Phantom limb syndrome occurs when amputees continue to feel sensations, even pain, in limbs that are no longer there. The brain map of the body doesn't update easily. It clings to a version of you that no longer exists physically. Conversely, in the rubber hand illusion, if you see a fake hand stroked in perfect synchrony with your real but hidden hand, you begin to feel ownership over the fake one. Your brain can adopt what isn't you, can reject what is. The ship of Theseus is often told as a thought experiment. If you replace every plank of a ship, one by one, until none of the original remains, is it still the same ship? Your body answers this question with every breath. Most of the atoms in your body are replaced over time: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen flowing in and out like water through a sieve. The body you inhabit today is not the one you were born in. It is not even the same one you had a few years ago. You are a constantly replaced object that mistakes itself for a fixed one. And if your body is a colony of strangers, a host for other species, an object in perpetual replacement, then what does owning it mean? The skin you touch, the bones that move, the blood that flows, they are only temporarily assembled in this arrangement dot. So here is the fifth question to unsettle you. If your body is not singular, not stable, not even purely human, then what exactly is the you that claims to live inside it? And if that you cannot survive without billions of others, were you ever truly separate at all? You move through your day, believing you made choices, that the decision to eat, speak, turn left, or turn right comes from somewhere deep inside, an inner control room where you sit at the controls. But neuroscience has been chipping away at that comforting illusion for decades, and what it reveals is far more disturbing. Your sense of agency may be nothing more than a delayed narration of events, already set in motion. In the early 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran a series of experiments in which participants were asked to flex their wrists whenever they felt like it. While noting the exact moment, they became aware of the urge to move. EEG readings revealed something unsettling. A measurable electrical buildup in the brain, called the readiness potential, occurred several hundred milliseconds before participants reported deciding to act. The brain had already begun preparing. The movement before the conscious mind chose it. Follow-up studies have found similar results with more complex decisions. Using fMRI scans, researchers have been able to predict with startling accuracy which button the subject will press, up to 7 seconds before the subject becomes aware of making the choice. Your conscious mind is not the driver, it is the narrator, watching events unfold and retroactively claiming ownership. Psychologist Daniel Wegner described this as the illusion of conscious will. Your brain generates thoughts, impulses, and actions automatically, and your sense of control emerges after the fact, a stitched-together justification that makes life feel coherent. You believe you willed your coffee order into being, but in reality, the neural machinery was already moving before you entered the story. This is not just theory, it shows up in your everyday life. Think about how often you say, "I don't know why I did that." The truth is, you rarely know why you do anything. Your mind runs on countless subconscious processes, hormonal fluctuations, habit loops, priming effects, implicit memories. If someone offers you a warm drink, you're more likely to describe them as warm in personality. If you smell cleaning fluid, you're more likely to tidy up. These effects happen without your awareness, shaping your choices in ways you never agreed to. Even moral decisions are not immune. Brain scans show that emotional responses in the amygdala often activate before the rational centers of the brain, meaning your sense of what is right or wrong is often a gut reaction first, with logic arriving later to defend it. You do not reason your way to morality. You feel it, then justify it. If free will were absolute, you would be able to step outside these influences. But you can't. Subliminal images flash too quickly to be consciously noticed can still affect your behavior. Priming with certain words can change the speed at which you walk. Hearing specific music can alter your perception of time. You are a collection of triggers, responding to stimuli you don't even register. Philosophers have long debated whether determinism, the idea that all events are the inevitable result of prior causes, means free will is impossible. If every decision you make is the product of your genes, your upbringing, your brain state, and the environment at that moment, then in what sense could you have done otherwise? Even randomness offers no escape. If a choice is truly random, then it is not yours in any meaningful way. Some argue that free will is still possible in a compatibilist sense, that as long as you are acting in accordance with your desires, you are free. But if your desires themselves are shaped by forces outside your control, that freedom collapses into tautology. You are free to do what you want, but you are not free to want what you want, and yet you feel like you are in control. You feel like the author of your actions. That feeling may be necessary for sanity, a trick of the mind to keep you from drowning in the chaos of cause and effect. If you truly accepted that every choice is predetermined or random, you might find it impossible to live. So here is the sixth question you will not stop hearing in the back of your mind. If every decision is made before you are aware of it, then what is the you that thinks it is deciding? And if that you is just a story told after the fact, who is telling it? When you close your eyes and think, I am me, it feels like there is a stable, continuous presence inside your head, a central witness who experiences the world, makes decisions, and remains the same from birth until death. But this self is not a thing. It is an effect, like the shimmer of heat on asphalt, vivid, convincing, and completely intangible. In neuroscience, there is no single location for the self. The brain has no you center, no master control room. Instead, there are networks. One processes sensory input, another generates language, another handles memory, another simulates possible futures. The self emerges from the interaction of these processes, like a movie projected from separate reels. The brain stitches them together into a seamless story, but remove anyone, and the sense of self changes or disappears. Split brain. Experiments in the 1960s revealed just how fragile this illusion is. When the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers connecting the two hemispheres, was severed to treat epilepsy, patients began living with two independent streams of consciousness. One hand could button a shirt while the other unbuttoned it. When the right hemisphere was shown an image and asked to point to it, the left hemisphere, which controls speech, would confidently describe seeing something entirely different, unaware of the mismatch. Each half invented explanations for the other's behavior, as if they were still one person. This is the interpreter module in action, the brain's habit of fabricating a coherent narrative, even when pieces of reality are missing or contradictory. You are constantly lying to yourself, but the lies are so smooth you don't notice. Meditation traditions have long suggested the self is an illusion, but modern neuroscience is catching up. The default mode network, active when your mind wanders or reflects on yourself, is where much of the self-story is generated. When this network is disrupted by deep meditation, psychedelics, or brain injury, the sense of a separate self can dissolve entirely. People describe feeling like they merged with their surroundings, as if boundaries between self and world had never existed. This dissolution is not mystical, it's neurological. Your brain constructs a model of you to help organize experience and predict behavior, but there is no central owner inside your skull. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger calls it the phenomenal self-model, a useful fiction. Like a dashboard display, it shows information about the body and mind without revealing the underlying machinery. Mistake the display for the driver, and you fall into the illusion of selfhood. Even memory reinforces the false solidity of you. You recall events and assign them to the same entity you call me, even though the person remembering is not the same as the person who experienced them. You share a name, but not the same body, not the same cells, not even the same beliefs. You are a chain of selves, each slightly different, each passing the story forward. Then there's the phenomenon of fugue states, in which people lose all memory of their identity and may live for weeks or months as someone else, with no awareness of the change. When they recover, they remember only the original self. Which one is real? Both? Neither? The Buddhist concept of anatta, no self, isn't a spiritual metaphor. It's a psychological observation, the sense of a fixed, unchanging. Self is a cognitive mirage. You can feel it vanish temporarily in moments of shock, awe, or flow. The truth is that you are a process, not a thing. And here is the most unsettling part. The illusion is so strong that even when you understand it intellectually, it doesn't dissolve. You keep feeling like there's a solid eye looking out from behind your eyes, even though you now know that I is just another thought, generated like any other dot. So here is the seventh question you will keep circling back to. If the self is only a story the brain tells, then who or what is the one hearing it? And if there is no one, who is reading this sentence right now? You imagine consciousness as a kind of inner light, the vivid being here that lets you feel your body, sense your surroundings, and think about your own thoughts. It seems like the most fundamental, undeniable part of existence. I am aware. Therefore, I am. But no one, not philosophers, not neuroscientists, not physicists, can fully explain what consciousness actually is, or why it exists at all. The problem begins with the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. Science can map neural activity, identify the circuits involved in vision, hearing, memory, emotion. But none of this explains how those circuits give rise to the feeling of being. Your brain could process information like a computer detect light, register sound, react to danger without the need for any inner experience. So why do you feel like anything at all? Why is there something it is like to be you? One theory, integrated information theory, IT, suggests that consciousness arises when a system has a high degree of information integration, when all its parts are interconnected in a way that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If this is true, consciousness could exist in degrees, not just in humans, but in animals, maybe even in certain machines. Your specialness as a conscious being would dissolve into a continuum. Another approach, the global workspace theory, proposes that consciousness is what happens when information in the brain becomes globally available to multiple systems, like posting an announcement to a shared bulletin board where all neural processes can access it. In this view, consciousness is not an inner essence, but a broadcast function, a coordination tool. The you experiencing the world might be nothing more than a reflection of how your brain organizes its own processes. Some theories go further, suggesting consciousness is not produced by the brain at all, but is a fundamental feature of the universe, like space or time. This is panpsychism, the idea that every particle has some primitive form of awareness and complex consciousness, emerges from vast networks of such tiny experiences. In that case, you are not a unique miracle, but a temporary arrangement of awareness, no more inherently special than a rock, except in complexity. And then there's the possibility that consciousness is an illusion, that the feeling of being aware is simply another narrative your brain tells, a useful fiction that allows for complex planning and social interaction. From this perspective, there is no inner light, just processes giving the impression of one, the way a movie projector creates the illusion of motion from still frames. Experiments with anesthesia are telling. Under deep anesthesia, your consciousness vanishes completely. Then, hours later, it returns without any awareness of the gap. You are gone, and then you are back, as if nothing happened. Where were you in that time? Nowhere. And yet, from your perspective, the transition was instantaneous. Dreaming adds another twist. In REM sleep, your brain generates vivid worlds, fully convincing realities in which you accept impossible events without question. You can feel fear, joy, pain, yet none of it is real in the waking sense. This suggests that consciousness is not tied to external reality at all. It is a self-contained phenomenon, capable of constructing entire universes inside itself without any external input. Locked-in syndrome takes the horror further. A person is fully conscious, but unable to move or communicate, trapped in silence. A mind in a coffin of flesh. If no one can detect your awareness, how would they know you exist? How do you know anyone else does? The philosopher's zombie thought experiment imagines beings identical to humans in every way, except they have no inner experience. They behave as if conscious, but feel nothing inside. How would you tell them apart from real people? How would they tell you apart? The mystery deepens when you consider that your consciousness, so vivid now, did not exist for most of cosmic history, and will likely not exist again after your death. And yet, you experience this particular slice of reality, this particular body, this particular moment. Why here? Why now? So here's the 8th question, one you will feel rattling inside your skull long after reading this. If consciousness is either universal, illusory, or inexplicable, then what exactly is it that thinks I am? And if you cannot answer that, how do you know that you truly are? You live as if time is a river flowing from the past, through the present, into the future. It feels absolute, undeniable. You age, clocks tick, stars burn out. Yet many physicists and philosophers now suspect that time itself may be nothing more than a useful illusion. Einstein shattered the idea of time as universal. In his theory of relativity, time is not a constant background, but intertwined with space, forming space-time. Motion and gravity can stretch or compress it. Two observers moving at different speeds or sitting in different gravitational fields will disagree about how much time has passed. Neither is wrong. Their nows are different dot in extreme cases near a black hole's event. Horizon time for one observer can slow almost to a stop relative to another far away. For the falling observer, everything feels normal. For the distant one, they appear frozen. The idea of a single shared present becomes meaningless. Some interpretations of relativity go further, suggesting that all moments past, present, and future exist simultaneously in a block universe. You do not move through time. You are a static being stretched across it. From this view, your birth, your death, and everything in between are equally real, just different coordinates in space-time. The flow of time is simply the way your consciousness experiences the slices of your own timeline. Quantum mechanics complicates things even more. At the smallest scales, particles do not evolve in time the way you might expect. Some interpretations suggest that time is not fundamental, but emerges from correlations between quantum states. In other words, the universe may have no ticking clock, just relationships that give rise to the appearance of change. Julian Barber, a physicist, argues that time is not a basic ingredient of reality at all. He proposes that the universe is made of nows, static configurations of the entire cosmos. We perceive motion and history because each now contains records, memories, fossils, photographs that create the illusion of a past. But these are just patterns embedded in the present. In reality, there is no flow, only a vast collection of frozen moments. This aligns disturbingly with certain mystical traditions that have long claimed time is a mental construct. In deep meditation or in some psychedelic states, people report the dissolution of time entirely, existing in a state of eternal present. If time can vanish from your perception so easily, how much can you trust its existence? Even your memory conspires against you. Neuroscience shows that every time you recall a memory, your brain reconstructs it, sometimes altering details. The past you carry with you is not fixed, but a mutable story you keep rewriting. If the past is not reliable and the future is unguaranteed, what does that leave you with? Only the moment you are in, and even that is gone before you can. Think about it. Consider the unsettling possibility. If the flow of time is an illusion, then nothing is truly becoming or ending. You are not moving toward death. You are already at every moment of your life, forever. The child you were, the person you are now, and the one who will breathe their last are all equally real in the structure of space-time. Your sense of moving from one to the other is just how your mind is built to interpret its coordinates. So here is the ninth question, one that gnaws at the edges of reason. If time is not real, then what is change? And if change is not real, how do you explain the feeling that something is slipping away? You move through the world surrounded by people, friends, strangers, loved ones, each with their own thoughts, feelings, and inner lives, or so you believe. But here's the first crack in that certainty. You can never directly experience another mind. You can only witness behaviors, words spoken, actions taken, expressions made, and infer that they come from a consciousness like yours. This assumption is called the problem of other minds. Philosophers have wrestled with it for centuries. And the unsettling truth is that you have no airtight proof that anyone else is truly conscious. They might be complex automata biological machines, perfectly capable of simulating emotion, empathy, and pain without ever feeling them. Consider the philosophical zombie thought experiment. A zombie, in this context, is not a shuffling corpse, but a being indistinguishable from a human in every way except one. It has no subjective experience. It laughs at jokes, cries at funerals, and says ouch when hurt, but inside, there is nothing. If such a creature existed, you would have no way of detecting the absence of awareness. How do you know that isn't everyone around you? Even advanced AI pushes this question into sharper focus. A machine could be programmed to convincingly claim consciousness, to express desires and fears, even to say, I love you. But whether it feels those things, or is just executing code, is unknowable. Replace machine with person, and the problem becomes disturbingly personal. Your entire understanding of social life relies on empathy, a kind of mental simulation where you imagine how another person might feel. But this is an inward projection. When you think she must be sad, what you actually mean is, if I were in her position, I would feel sadness. It's an assumption based on your own mind, not direct access to hers. In dreams, your brain can generate people who speak, laugh, and express emotions. They seem alive until you wake up and realize they were puppets of your imagination. How can you be sure waking life isn't the same your mind generating a convincing cast of characters for you to interact with? Solipsism takes this to its extreme. The idea that only your own mind is certain to exist, and everything else, people, the world, even time, might be an elaborate projection. While most reject pure solipsism as impractical, it is logically unassailable. You can't prove the reality of anything beyond your own consciousness. Some neuroscientists and philosophers even suggest that consciousness itself may be rarer than we assume. Perhaps it is an emergent property that not all humans share to the same degree or at all. The unsettling implication: you could be the only true observer in a sea of unconscious actors. So here is your 10th question, one that might make you look at the people you love with an edge of doubt. If you can never truly know another mind, how can you be sure you're not utterly, profoundly alone? You believe in time because you feel it. The tick of a clock, the unfolding of events, the movement from morning to night, it all seems undeniable. But feelings are not evidence. They are interpretations. And the more you study time, the more it begins to dissolve in your hands like smoke. Einstein shattered the comfortable illusion of a universal now. In relativity, time is not an independent backdrop, but intertwined with space, forming space-time. Two observers moving at different speeds or in different gravitational fields will experience time passing at different rates. That means now. For you might be yesterday or tomorrow for someone else. There is no single shared moment in the universe. The implications are worse than they first appear. If there is no universal present, then past, present, and future must all be equally real, a concept known as the block universe. In this model, time is not flowing. It is laid out in its entirety, like frames on a film reel. You are not moving through time. You are fixed in your frame, forever. The sensation of movement is an illusion your brain generates, like a flipbook animating still pictures. Philosophers have attacked the notion of time from other angles. Augustine confessed in the 4th century, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it, I do not know." The present moment, upon inspection, collapses instantly into the past. The future is nothing but a projection in your mind, and the past survives only as a memory, a construct that is notoriously unreliable, malleable, and prone to invention. In physics, some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that time might not be a fundamental property of the universe at all. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, for instance, describes the quantum state of the universe without any reference to time. The universe could be timeless at its deepest level, with time emerging only as an approximation for certain observers, like you. And there's another problem. If time is real, then change is real. But the problem of change is ancient. Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice, because the water is always flowing." Parmenides disagreed, claiming that change is an illusion and reality is static. In the block universe view, Parmenides was right. The river never flows. Every droplet is frozen in place for eternity. You experience time's arrow as moving forward, but that arrow comes from entropy, the statistical tendency for disorder to increase. Yet entropy is a property of probability, not an inherent force of nature. Reverse all the movements of all particles, and time would appear to run backward. Your memories would rewrite themselves, and you would have no awareness that anything had changed. If all moments are equally real, then the you reading this is just as real as the you who is already dead, or the you who hasn't yet been born. You are not becoming anything. You are a fixed sculpture in a 4-dimensional block, unable to move even an instant forward. So the question becomes not, what time is it? But why do you think there is such a thing as time at all? If your past and future selves are just static frames and nothing ever moves, then in what sense are you alive right now? You've probably heard the idea before. Maybe we're living in a simulation. It sounds like a late-night dorm room conversation or a sci-fi movie premise. But here's the unsettling truth: serious philosophers, physicists, and computer scientists have been unable to dismiss it. And once you think it through, you realize something disturbing. If it's true, there's no way to prove otherwise. The philosopher Nick Bostrom outlined the argument in 2003. It's deceptively simple. If advanced civilizations can run hyper-realistic simulations of conscious beings, then at least some will do so. If they do, the number of simulated beings would vastly outnumber real base reality beings. Statistically, that means it's far more likely that you are a simulated being than a real one. The logic doesn't require alien worlds or future humans. It just needs the possibility that intelligence somewhere has enough computing power. And here's the kicker. Moore's law, the steady increase in computational capacity, makes it plausible that future machines could simulate an entire universe, down to every atom, with conscious beings who think they're real. If you are in a simulation, the world's laws of physics might just be the rules of the code. Planck length? That could be the pixel size of reality. The speed of light? A maximum data transfer rate. Quantum randomness? Maybe just the simulation engine skipping unnecessary calculations until it needs to render an outcome. Glitches would be rare, but have you ever seen the Mandela effect? The strange way groups of people swear something happened differently than recorded history says? Or déjà vu, the eerie sense you've been here before. Science explains these as quirks of memory and perception. But if you were a simulated character, these could also be artifacts of a patch update or a loading error. Even more unsettling is the possibility that the simulators could intervene. They could tweak events, alter history, or even delete you entirely without warning. If reality is code, then everything you know can be rewritten instantly, and you would never know it had happened. The real philosophical trap is this. If you somehow did prove we're in a simulation, your discovery would itself be part of the simulation, and the beings running it might shut it down. That means the safest thing for them is to make sure you never find definitive proof. You are, in a sense, inside a perfect cage, one made not of walls, but of logic itself. Here's the paradox. If you can't tell whether you're in a simulation, and it makes no practical difference to how you live your life, does it matter? Or does the knowledge that you might be simulated change the way you think about your choices, your morals, and your meaning? If you are simulated, then you are not a physical being at all, but a pattern of information, an arrangement of funcer, data in a processor. That raises the most unnerving question of all. When the simulation ends, do you end? Or do you get saved, copied, and booted up somewhere else? Imagine an ancient wooden ship, famous across the land. Over decades, storms batter it, salt water rots its planks, and the crew replaces each damaged board with a new one. Eventually, every single piece of wood is replaced. Not a single plank from the original ship remains. Here's the question. Is it still the same ship? Philosophers have wrestled with this puzzle for over 2,000 years. On one hand, the ship has continuity. It still carries the same name, the same history, and the same purpose. On the other hand, every atom that once made it has been swapped out. If identity is based on physical substance, then it's a completely different ship. Now add a twist. What if someone collected all the old, discarded planks and reassembled them into another ship? Which one is the real ship of Theseus, the perfectly maintained one in the harbor, or the reconstructed one made of the original materials? This isn't just a problem for ships. It's a problem for you. Every 7 to 10 years, nearly every cell in your body is replaced. Your skin renews itself in weeks, your bones in years, and even your brain's neurons slowly change their connections over time. The you from a decade ago is not made of the same biological material. So, are you still the same person? Or are you a succession of different beings wearing the same name, inheriting the same memories, and pretending it's all one continuous story? The puzzle deepens when you think about consciousness. If we replaced each neuron in your brain with a perfect artificial copy, one at a time, would you still be you at the end of the process? What if we replaced them all instantly? And if the copy had the same memories, feelings, and personality, could anyone, even you, tell the difference? It gets worse. If someone scanned your brain's complete structure and uploaded it into a computer, the resulting digital mind would believe it was you. From the inside, it would feel like you simply woke up in a different body. But the original biological, you would still be standing there. Which one is real? Which one owns your identity? The ship of Theseus forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Continuity of identity might be an illusion. We cling to the idea that we are the same person from birth to death, but we are in constant flux, cells changing, thoughts evolving, memories fading, personalities shifting. Perhaps you are just a story your brain tells to stitch all those versions together. And if that's true, then the only thing holding you together is belief. If you ever stopped believing you were the same person as yesterday, maybe you wouldn't be anymore. You believe that watching something is passive, that you can see the world without changing it. You're wrong. In quantum mechanics, the observer effect is not just metaphorical, it's measurable. When scientists fire electrons through a double-slit barrier, the electrons behave like waves, forming interference patterns as if they pass through both slits at once. But the moment we try to observe which slit each electron goes through, just observe, nothing more, the pattern collapses. Electrons act like particles instead of waves. This means that the act of measurement changes the outcome. Not because the observer has interfered physically with the experiment, but because reality itself is not settled into a definite state until it is observed. The universe, at its smallest scales, resists existing in one form unless forced to. Choose by an act of measurement. Now ask yourself, if the very existence of things depends on being observed, what happens when you're not looking? Does the room behind you vanish into a haze of probabilities until you turn around? Do the people you love dissolve into statistical clouds the moment they're outside your sight? Some interpretations of quantum theory suggest that reality doesn't fully exist until it is observed by consciousness. This isn't just poetic, it's supported by experiments in delayed choice quantum erasers, where decisions made after an event can seem to retroactively determine what really happened. And then the horror seeps in. If your act of observing changes reality, what about being observed yourself? Your behavior shifts subtly under watchful eyes. You speak differently, hold your body differently, even change what you think. Psychologists have documented this in countless studies. The Hawthorne effect, social desirability bias, self-conscious behavior. You are never the same person under observation as you are when alone. This means no one, not your parents, your friends, your lover, has ever truly seen the real you. They have only seen the version you become when watched. And you, in turn, have only ever seen the version of them that exists in your presence. Reality is not what it is. It's what it appears to be in the act of being witnessed. And you cannot escape this trap, because even when you are alone, you are observing yourself. Every thought, every self-reflection, alters the thing you are trying to see. So tell me, if you can never observe the world as it truly is, how do you know it exists at all? You tell yourself you are the same person you were yesterday. You are not. The ship of Theseus is a puzzle from ancient Greece. If you replace one plank of a ship, it's still the same ship. Replace another and another until every single piece has been swapped for something new, and the question remains, is it still the same ship? Or is it something else entirely? Your body answers this question for you without asking permission. Nearly every cell in your body is replaced over time. Your skin every few weeks, your liver in months, your skeleton in a decade. The you that was kissed 5 years ago, that wept 10 years ago, no longer exists physically. That person is dust or food for worms now. Yet here you are, claiming to be them. Your memories make you think you are continuous. But memory is not a flawless recording. It's an act of reconstruction. Each time you recall an event, your brain rewrites it, influenced by who you are now, not who you were then. Over decades, the story becomes more fiction than fact. You are not the ship rebuilt plank by plank. You are the ship constantly, rewritten by an unreliable author. And the horror grows deeper. Identity is not just in your body or your memories. It's in your relationships, your habits, your patterns. Change enough of those, and even if every cell remained the same, you would still not be you. The person who laughed at a childhood joke might not even understand it today. Some philosophers go further. There is no self to preserve in the first place. David Hume argued that the self is an illusion, a bundle of perceptions without an underlying core. What you think of as you is just the continuity of moment-to-moment awareness, stitched together by language and habit into something that feels permanent. If that is true, then you are not traveling through time. There is no traveler, only the illusion of one, painted over a series of vanishing moments. The child in old photographs is not you, not even a past version of you. It is someone else entirely, gone forever, wearing a face you will never see. In the mirror again. And yet, each morning, you wake and slip into the role, speaking in the voice of a ship that has already been dismantled and burned out. So tell me, if there is no continuous you, who is the one asking this question right now? You think forgetting is passive, like dust gathering in the corners of your mind. It isn't. Forgetting is violent. Every second, neurons fire in patterns that decide what stays and what goes. The hippocampus, the archivist of your brain, selects which memories deserve preservation. But preservation is not the default. Erasure is. Most of your experiences dissolve before you even notice they happened, their traces overwritten by the chemical tides of new impressions. You have already lost most of your own life. You don't feel the loss because you cannot mourn what you can't recall. Consider this. The Ebbinghaus forgetting curve shows that without reinforcement, the majority of newly learned information fades within days. What remains after years is not truth, but fragments, a few bright images floating in a sea of oblivion. The story you tell about your life is built from these scraps, sewn together into a coherent narrative that hides the gaps. And it gets worse. The memories you do keep are not faithful to the past. The more often you recall them, the more they mutate. A smell, a face, a phrase might slip in from somewhere else, contaminating the original. What you believe happened to you may never have happened at all. You are remembering a lie that your brain told you, one that you helped rewrite over and over. Entire cultures vanish this way. Oral histories break when the last living memory dies. Without the survivors, the battles, the loves, the horrors never occurred in the minds of the living. The event remains in some objective, physical sense, but in the human world, it is gone. Neurologists studying Alzheimer's disease find something even more haunting. Identity disintegrates in reverse. First, the recent years vanish, then the middle, and the earliest until the body still breathes, but no trace of you remains inside. Your own forgetting has already erased versions of yourself more completely than death ever could. There are smiles you once gave, rooms you once stood in, faces you once loved, that will never exist for you again, not even in ghost form, not. And so the question becomes, if forgetting has already stolen most of your life, what exactly are you holding on to when you say, I am still me? You live inside a clock you did not build. Its hands dictate your waking, your work, your meals, your sleep. But this clock is not the universe. It is a device, an invention, a way of slicing something continuous into something countable. Physics has never found a universal tick. There is no cosmic second that beats everywhere at once. Einstein showed that time is relative, bending and stretching, depending on speed and gravity. A second for you is not the same second for someone moving at a different velocity or living deeper in a gravity well. Time is not fixed. It is warped by the very fabric it measures. And yet, human life is chained to artificial timekeeping. The Babylonian-based 60 system gave us minutes and seconds. Medieval monks carved the day into canonical hours. The Industrial Revolution locked workers into shifts, their bodies bending to the rhythm of factory bells. The clock became a master uniform, unyielding, forcing nature's irregular pulses into mechanical precision. This is the great trick. Time feels like an external truth, but much of it is an agreement we pretend is real. Calendars drift, requiring leap years. Time zones shift by political decision, not by nature. Nations have moved entire hours forward or backward overnight, erasing mornings or manufacturing sunsets. In 2011, Samoa skipped December 30th entirely, leaping across the international date line in a single legislative breath. Your own body is older than the time you count. Cells regenerate at different rates, some every few days, others lasting years. The atoms in your body were forged in stars billions of years before your birth. On this scale, you are not 20 or 40 or 80 years old. You are ancient dust pretending to be a fleeting self. When physicists attempt to merge quantum mechanics and relativity, time begins to dissolve entirely. In certain formulations, time is not a fundamental feature of reality. It emerges only from relationships between changing states. Without change, there is no time at all. Without you measuring it, there is no ticking clock, no flowing river, only an undivided, eternal now dot. So if time is relative, political, and possibly not even real, what exactly have you been living inside all these years? Everything you see is already gone. Light takes time to travel, and the moment it reaches your eyes, it is already the past. The moon you watch in the night sky is not where you think it is. It has already moved. The star you wish upon may have died centuries ago. The world you think you inhabit is always a ghost, lagging behind itself. You don't see reality. You see a translation. Photons bounce off objects, enter your eyes, are converted into electrical signals, and are reconstructed by your brain. The colors you experience aren't properties of the world. They are interpretations your mind paints over raw wavelengths. The tree is not green. It reflects light in a way that triggers specific neural patterns. If your brain were wired differently, the same tree could appear blue, gold, or invisible. This prison of perception extends beyond vision. Your ears transform vibrations in air into the illusion of sound. Your sense of touch is your nervous system's reaction to pressure and temperature, not direct contact with the physical world. You never touch anything. The electron shells of your atoms repel the electron shells of what you reach for. Touch is an electromagnetic denial. Even the concept of an observer is under attack by physics. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation affects the outcome particles behave differently when measured. This isn't metaphor. It's experimentally verified. At the smallest scales, reality does not unfold as an independent, objective stage. It is entangled with your act of looking. Without an observer, the world does not resolve into definite states. It lingers in ghostly probabilities. And yet, you can never observe without interfering. You can never know a thing without changing it. Every attempt to see reality more clearly bends it under the weight of your attention. This is the observer's prison. You are trapped inside a mind that cannot escape its own filter, trying to grasp a world that changes every time you reach for it. You believe you're experiencing reality, but what you're truly experiencing is the echo of your own nervous system, endlessly bouncing back at you. If you can never see the world as it is, how can you ever be certain the world exists at all? You trust your memories as evidence of your past. They tell you who you are, what you've done, what's been done to you. Without them, identity collapses. But how much of what you remember is true? Every act of remembering is an act of distortion. Neuroscience shows that memory is not a recording, but a reconstruction. Each time you recall an event, you are not retrieving it. You are rebuilding it from fragments, guided by context, emotion, and suggestion. Like copying a file, but with errors introduced every time. The memory you rely on today may not be the same as the one you retrieved a decade ago. Worse, entire false memories can be implanted. Psychologists like Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated that people can be led to remember being lost in a mall as a child, meeting Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, or witnessing events they never saw. Courts have convicted people on testimony later proven impossible. Families have split apart because someone remembered abuse that never happened. If memory can be fabricated so easily, how do you know any of yours are real? Even collective memory is unstable. Nations rewrite history. Textbooks omit atrocities or invent heroism. The story of the past is constantly reshaped by the needs of the present. What you believe to be history may be nothing more than a curated mythology. Consider this regress. If your only access to the past is memory, and memory is unreliable, then the past itself may not exist as you think it does. All that exists are fragile reconstructions in your brain, vulnerable to suggestion and decay. There is no solid thread connecting you to yesterday, only the illusion of continuity. If who you are is built upon memory, and memory is an invention, then what is left of you at all? Every night, you vanish. You slip into unconsciousness, a state where time fractures, identity dissolves, and self-awareness flickers out. You do not notice the transition. You only notice the before and after. Hours disappear, yet your body lies still, eyes closed, mind sealed away from its own continuity. In that gap, what are you? Sleep is a rehearsal for death. In both, the self is suspended, the narrative broken. When you close your eyes, there is no guarantee you will re-emerge. Most nights you do, but one night you won't, and you have no way of knowing when. The thin line between falling asleep and ceasing forever is so delicate that your body repeats the gamble daily. Dreams do not save you. They are not proof of consciousness, but fragments stitched together by a desperate brain. During REM sleep, your motor systems are paralyzed, as though nature is protecting the world from your illusions. You are trapped in a theater built from scraps of memory and impulse, unable to tell whether you are watching or living. Yet when you awaken, you accept the narrative seamlessly, as if nothing happened, as if continuity was preserved. But at WASN Now consider this. When you wake up, how do you know it is you that returned? Consciousness is not a continuous stream. It is discrete bursts of awareness tied together by memory. Each morning might not be a resumption, but a replacement, a new mind inheriting the files of the old. You feel continuous only because you remember yesterday. But what if you are not the same observer who closed their eyes? What if you died each night and only the archive persists? If sleep is practice for death, then waking is a kind of reincarnation, but not for you, only for the story you leave behind. So when you close your eyes tonight, how certain are you that it is you who will ever open them again? When you step outside at night and look up, you are staring into an abyss so vast that your mind cannot hold it. Each star you see is not a point of light, but an entire sun, some larger than you can fathom, some older than the earth itself. Beyond them stretch galaxies, clusters, superclusters, a cosmos expanding so violently that most of it is already forever beyond your reach. The silence you hear is not peace, it is absence. This is the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so large, and if life should arise in countless places, why have we heard nothing? The Milky Way alone has hundreds of billions of stars. Even if only a fraction of them host habitable planets, the number of potential civilizations should be staggering. Yet the night sky is mute. Radio telescopes scan endlessly, but the signals they receive are always noise, static, or the faint heartbeat of dying stars. If intelligence is common, the void should be alive with voices. Instead, it is crushingly still. Perhaps civilizations always self-destruct. Nuclear weapons, ecological collapse, runaway technology, all familiar endings that might be universal. Or perhaps intelligent species retreat inward, abandoning the physical world for digital solipsism, never bothering to speak. Another possibility. Something else is out there, something that erases voices when they grow too loud. The Great Filter Hypothesis suggests that civilizations hit a wall they cannot pass. If that wall lies behind us, we are miraculous survivors. If it lies ahead, we are doomed. Now consider what silence itself implies. Every sound you've ever heard is the product of vibration within a medium. Space, vast and empty, carries none of these. Light travels, but sound does not. The universe is not only dark, it is mute, indifferent to your existence. Even if a star explodes in a distant galaxy, no sound waves ripple through the void. Catastrophes happen in absolute silence, invisible unless a photon reaches your eye. Millions of years later, entire worlds may be screaming into nothing, and you will never know. Think of this silence as a mirror. You shout your signals outward: radio, television, digital noise, and they travel for light years, a faint sphere of your presence expanding slowly. But beyond that small bubble, you are indistinguishable from non-existence. To the universe, you are already gone. And even within that fragile bubble, the odds of someone listening, someone tuned to the exact frequency at the exact moment, are almost non-existent. You want to believe silence is temporary, that eventually you will hear an answer. But maybe the silence is the answer. Maybe intelligence is so rare that you are utterly alone. Maybe the others are dead. Maybe there never were others. Or maybe, far worse, they are listening now and they choose not to speak. This silence is not neutral. It presses against you. It swallows the possibility of connection. It drowns meaning itself. The longer you look into it, the more you realize how fragile your species is, how temporary, how forgettable. If Earth were erased tomorrow, the universe would remain unchanged. Not a single galaxy would notice her absence. You believe your life carries weight because you feel it pressing down on you. But against the silence of the universe, your existence registers as nothing at all. Every achievement, every monument, every word written or spoken, every desperate attempt to matter, none of it echoes beyond your tiny corner of sky dot. And here is the question that will not leave you. If the universe is silent, if no one answers, if no one is listening, then what? Was the point of speaking at all? You think of memory as something solid, a record of your past, the foundation of who you are. But every recollection you hold has already betrayed you. Neuroscience shows that memory is not a photograph stored in the brain. It is a reconstruction, fragile and corruptible. Each time you recall an event, you rewrite it, blending truth with invention. You are not remembering. You are editing. Elizabeth Loftus's experiments on false memories revealed how easily suggestion can distort recall. Participants were told a fabricated story that they had been lost in a shopping mall as a child, and many came to believe it, even supplying convincing details that never happened. This is not an anomaly. It is the rule. Your memories are pliable clay, reshaped every time you bring them to mind. So what does that mean for you when your very sense of self is built from these fragile reconstructions? You cling to experiences as anchors. Your first heartbreak, this face of your mother, the moment you felt humiliated in front of peers. But none of those anchors are fixed. They drift each time you revisit them. What you are left with is a collection of stories, rehearsed so often that you mistake them for immutable truth. Consider the ship of Theseus, the ancient paradox. If every plank of a ship is replaced over time, is it still the same ship? Your mind performs this trick on memory. Each retelling replaces a plank, a detail, a feeling. The memory feels stable, yet it is not the same as when it first occurred. By the time you reach old age, your most treasured memories may bear little resemblance to what truly happened. The person you believe yourself to be is an accumulation of edits. Even collective memory falters. Nations tell themselves stories about origins, victories, and traumas. sanding down inconvenient details and magnifying others. History becomes a mirror of need, not fact. Monuments are built not to preserve what occurred, but to enforce a version of what is believed. When collective memory is this fragile, the line between reality and myth dissolves. If your memories are false, then what is your identity? You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. Your cells replaced, your thoughts reshaped, your beliefs altered. Memory tricks you into believing continuity exists, but continuity is only a story you tell yourself. Now imagine a darker possibility. If your brain can fabricate memories so convincingly, how can you be sure that even your earliest ones are real? Childhood recollections, flashes of colors, voices, fragments. Are they lived experiences or narrative reconstructions? If your most foundational moments are fabrications, what remains of you? The terror grows sharper when you realize this. Your present experiences will suffer the same fate. Tomorrow, today will already be corrupted. Every day, the past erodes and is rewritten. You cannot hold on to a single unaltered truth of who you were. Yourself is nothing but a story under perpetual revision, a manuscript that will never be finished because the ink is rewritten each time it is read. And then comes the silence of forgetting. Whole decades vanish, faces blur, names dissolve. You will one day forget most of what you now cling to. If you are unlucky enough to endure dementia, you will even forget the concept of self entirely. The scaffolding of memory will collapse, and the body will remain vacant, alive but hollow dot. So here you are, built from memories that are false, eroding, and destined to vanish. Yet you cling to them desperately, because without them, there is nothing left to call you. This prison is unique. It is built not of walls, but of illusions, fragile and decaying, but impossible to escape. And so the question waits, unavoidable. If yourself is only a collection of false, decaying memories, then who, exactly, is the one asking the question right now? You have been told that you make choices, that you act because you decide. That free will is the very core of what makes you human. Yet every layer of science and philosophy you peel back erodes that illusion until nothing is left but machinery. Dressed in the costume of freedom, Benjamin Libet's famous experiments in the 1980s exposed a crack in the foundation. Electrodes on the scalp showed that the brain's readiness, potential to act, began before participants consciously decided to move their finger. The decision to act arose in the unconscious, and only afterward did the conscious mind claim ownership of it. Your awareness lags behind your brain's activity, like a child running breathlessly after an adult who has already chosen the path. But perhaps the most damning evidence lies deeper. Neuroscientists like Soon, Brass, and Haynes extended Libet's findings, using fMRI to predict choices up to 7 seconds before participants were aware of deciding. Your brain knows what you will do before you choose. Free will is not choosing. It is noticing what your unconscious has already set in motion. Still, you cling to the illusion. You insist, I could have chosen differently. But determinism crushes this hope. Every choice you make arises from prior causes. Genetics you did not select, upbringing you did not design, circumstances you did not control, the taste you prefer, the beliefs you hold. The person you fall in love with each emerges from a causal chain extending back through your parents, their parents, and beyond. Trace it far enough, and you arrive at forces before your birth, before humanity itself, shaping what you call you. Philosophers tried to save free will through compatibilism, redefining freedom not as independence from causes, but as alignment with them. You are free, they argue, if you act according to your desires. But what shaped your desires? If a hidden machine programmed you to want chocolate instead of vanilla, are you free because you chose according to that programming? or enslaved by it? The more you examine freedom, the more it disintegrates. Consider addiction. The addict's brain is hijacked by craving, yet he insists he could stop if he wanted. Could he? Or was he always bound by neurological pathways stronger than intention? And if that is true of the addict, why not of you, with your habits, your fears, your impulses you cannot explain? And then the paradox grows darker. If free will does not exist, then neither does moral responsibility. Punishment becomes theater. Blame becomes meaningless. Hitler was a deterministic consequence of his environment and biology, as much as a falling rock is the consequence of gravity. So was Mother Teresa. Every tyrant and every saint was only the inevitable flowering of prior causes. Where, then, is justice? If your actions are determined, you cannot be praised. If they are random, you cannot be blamed. In either case, the you who chooses disappears, yet you feel the weight of your choices crushing you each day. You worry about what to eat, what to say, whom to love. You agonize as though you had power. But perhaps this is the cruelest joke of all, that the illusion of freedom is necessary. Even though freedom does not exist. What would life mean if you accepted that everything you have done, everything you will do, is already written in the causal flow of the universe? That even your resistance to this idea has been predetermined by synaptic firings long before you read these words? The abyss opens before you. If you are not free, then you are not a self in control. You are a passenger, a witness, a puppet, dangling on invisible strings pulled by history, physics, biology. You never chose who you are. You never will. And so the question remains, impossible to answer. If you never had free will, then who, exactly, is the one still pretending to choose? You believe memory is your anchor, the thread stitching together the continuity of your life. Without it, who would you be? Yet neuroscience and psychology reveal that memory is not a recording, but a reconstruction. Story rewritten each time it is retrieved, altered by bias, context, and desire. The more you recall a memory, the less accurate it becomes. The self you think you are is built on a foundation of distortions. Consider Elizabeth Loftus's work on false memories. In experiments, participants were convinced they had been lost in a shopping mall as children, or that they had met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, impossible events that never occurred. Yet with enough suggestion, these memories felt as vivid and real as anything else in their minds. Entire histories can be fabricated from nothing, and once implanted, the mind guards them as if they were sacred truths. If you cannot trust your memory, how can you trust your life? Even authentic memories betray you. Every recall is not playback, but reconstruction. Neurons fire, reassemble fragments, fill in gaps with plausible detail. The brain prefers coherence over accuracy. The story it tells you feels seamless, but beneath it lies patchwork, invention. When you say, "I remember," what you really mean is, "I have stitched together an illusion that comforts me." But the betrayals go further. Emotional intensity warps memory. Traumatic events may be burned into you with painful clarity, yet even these are prone to distortion. Witnesses of the same tragedy recall entirely different sequences of events. Some remember colors vividly, others silence, others sounds that never happened. If the most important life-altering events of your existence are unreliable in your mind, then what can you say you truly know? The fragility of memory has been weaponized. Courts once relied on eyewitness testimony as the gold standard, yet wrongful convictions pile up because of its failures. Innocent people have been sentenced to death because someone remembered seeing them. Their lives ended not because of what they did, but because someone else's brain told them a story it mistook for fact. Memory also manipulates your future. Daniel Schachter described the 7 sins of memory: bias, suggestibility, misattribution, transience, locking, persistence, and absent-mindedness. Each flaw erodes the narrative you think you carry. Even nostalgia is a distortion, painting the past in warm colors it never truly had, seducing you into longing for a life that never existed. You miss a childhood that was not as happy as you remember. You ache for relationships that were not as kind as you now believe. The recursive horror is this. Memory is not only unreliable, but it is the very basis of your identity. Who are you but the accumulation of your remembered experiences? If those experiences are false, shifting, unstable, then who are you? When you remember your childhood, you are not revisiting truth. You are creating a new fiction each time, layering lies upon lies, until the original event is buried under decades of invention. And what of forgetting? Every day, synapses weaken, connections dissolve. Whole pieces of your past vanish into silence. The majority of your life will be forgotten. You cannot even remember the meals you ate last week, or the thousands of words you once spoke, but will never recall. Most of your life disappears as though it never happened. Does existence vanish when memory does? Did you truly live the moments you cannot summon? Worse still, memory is selective. You have convinced yourself you are a certain kind of person because you remember the events that support that identity while discarding those that contradict it. In this way, memory is propaganda. It edits, censors, manipulates, curates. You are both author and victim of a story that never fully happened. You may believe you know who you are because of what you remember, but neuroscience tells you otherwise. You are not your memories. You are the way your brain currently chooses to tell them. Today, you are one person. Tomorrow, you will recall the same event differently, and you will become someone else. If the past is endlessly rewritten, then your identity is endlessly destroyed and rebuilt. So ask yourself, if memory is a lie you keep retelling, what remains of you when the story finally collapses into silence? You assume that you live in the present moment. You feel the chair beneath you, hear these words in your mind, believe you are here and now. But neuroscience dismantles that illusion. The present does not exist the way you think it. Does not every perception you experience is delayed? Light must strike your eyes. Sound must vibrate your ears. Nerve signals must crawl through your body at finite speeds, and your brain must process them before you are conscious of anything. By the time you see a falling glass or hear a bird's song, the event has already happened. Consciousness is always lagging behind reality, caught in the afterglow of moments that have already passed. This delay may be only fractions of a second, but it is enough to mean that you never experience the world directly. You live in a reconstruction, simulation stitched together by your brain to feel seamless. When you believe you are touching the table, you are not feeling it in real time, but a memory created an instant after the fact. The now is an echo. Your brain smooths over this gap with a trick called the specious present, a window of a few seconds in which events are collected and bound into what feels like an immediate moment. But this now is a construct. It is not truly present. It is your brain's solution to the problem of delay. A lie it tells you so that you don't feel trapped in lag. Yet the lag is real. Imagine trying to live without it. If you could see reality with zero delay, it would shatter you. You would hear a sound before you could place it. You would see a movement before you could respond. The body cannot process existence without buffering. You are trapped in the prison of delay because without it, life would be chaos. Consider déjà vu. It occurs when your brain mistakenly processes an event twice, with a fraction of delay between them, making the second feel like a memory. In other words, déjà vu is a glimpse into the truth. Your brain is always late, always processing the world after it happens. Every moment is déjà vu, disguised. The prison extends further. Think of sports, where athletes appear to act instantly. A batter hits a fastball, traveling 100 miles per hour, a task that should be impossible given neural delays. The secret is prediction. The brain does not experience the ball in real time. It predicts where it will be and acts on the forecast. Your entire life is run not on reality, but on educated guesses. You don't live in the present. You live in probability. Even your sense of now varies with state of mind. Time dilates in fear when milliseconds stretch into eternity, and it contracts in flow when hours vanish unnoticed. These distortions reveal that time is not experienced equally, but shaped by the mechanics of perception. The moment you cling to is elastic, relative, unstable. Now think of sleep. Entire nights pass without your awareness. Dreams mimic experiences, but their clock runs differently. You wake up believing you lost hours, when in fact your consciousness was simply absent from them. If the present can disappear so easily, how secure is it really? Worse still, physics tells us that the present may not exist at all. Einstein's theory of relativity reveals that what you call now depends on your position in space and speed in time. Two observers moving differently cannot agree on what is happening at the same time. There is no universal present. The cosmos has no shared now. What you call the present is an illusion your brain insists upon in order to survive. Means your entire life is a negotiation between delay, prediction, and reconstruction. You believe you are grounded in a moment, but you are forever chasing it, never catching up. You are a prisoner of echoes, locked in a past that your brain disguises as the present. And yet, this illusion may be merciful. If you could see the real-time chaos of existence, you would dissolve under its weight. The prison of the present shields you. It edits, it buffers, it delays. It gives you a coherent story at the cost of truth. So ask yourself, if you are never truly in the present, only ever in a delayed simulation, have you ever lived at all? You believe that when you observe something, you are simply looking at what is there, as if your mind were a clear window. But observation is never neutral. To see is to interfere. To measure is to alter. To observe is to distort. This truth begins in physics. At the quantum level, particles do not exist in fixed states until they are measured. Before observation, they are smeared out in probabilities, everywhere and nowhere at once. The act of observing collapses this cloud of potential into a definite outcome. Reality does not unfold independently of you. It requires you to look at it to take shape. But what does that mean? If particles only have fixed positions when observed, then every observation is a kind of creation. You are not simply seeing reality, you are helping make it. You are complicit in what becomes real. Consider the famous double-slit experiment. When particles are fired through two slits, they form an interference pattern, behaving like waves of probability. But when you measure which slit the particle passes through, the wave collapses and the particle behaves like a solid dot. Simply watching changes the outcome. The universe is not passive. It responds to your gaze. The unsettling question: what happens when you are not looking? Is the moon there when no one is observing it? Einstein thought this idea absurd, insisting reality must exist independently of human eyes. But quantum theory continues to resist this comforting belief. The act of measurement is not just passive, it is participatory. You may think this problem only haunts subatomic physics, far from your daily life. But it extends everywhere. Take perception. When you look at an object, you believe you are receiving information from it. Yet your brain discards most of the input and fills in the blanks with assumptions. You think you are seeing the thing, but you are seeing your brain's edited version, a hallucination guided by expectation. You never observe the world directly. you observe your model of it. This means every act of observation is a distortion. Two people can watch the same event and come away with different realities. Witnesses disagree in courtrooms. Memories shift. Over time, even colors appear differently depending on the brain that perceives them. If the observer always changes what is observed, then what is the truth of the observed thing? Does it even exist apart from the observer? Consider the psychological version of the double-slit experiment, the Hawthorne effect. When workers know they are being watched, their behavior changes. The act of observing them alters what is observed. Surveillance cameras reduce crime, not by recording, but by being seen. The observer bends reality simply by existing. Even animals reveal this principle. A gazelle behaves differently under the eyes of a predator. A bird sings more cautiously when other birds are watching. Observation alters action across life itself. To see something is to be part of its story, whether you wish to or not. Now consider the self. When you turn your gaze inward, when you observe your own thoughts, they shift. Try to notice your breathing right now. It was automatic, unconscious, until you looked at it. Now it is deliberate, controlled. Observation reshapes the observed. Your mind cannot even examine itself without interference. This recursive loop deepens the paradox. If every act of observation alters reality, then there is no true state of anything, only states under observation. But what about when nothing observes? Does the unobserved universe exist? Or does it wait, silent and unresolved, until an eye falls upon it? Physics hints at an answer that disturbs both science and philosophy. The observer may not need to be human. Any interaction, even between particles, may count as observation. In this sense, the universe observes itself into being, constantly collapsing possibilities into outcomes through endless chains of interaction. But that means reality is not stable, it is dynamic, constantly revised by the act of being noticed. If that is so, then you must face a terrifying possibility. Reality is not a fixed stage on which you live. It is fluid, entangled with your perception. Each time you look, you change the play. Each time you measure, you rewrite the script out. So ask yourself this: if nothing can be observed without being altered, then what is the world when no one is watching? And what, exactly, are you when you try to observe yourself? You believe that you choose. Every day you decide what to eat, where to go, whom to love, and what to believe. You feel the weight of choice pressing on you, and you imagine yourself steering the wheel of your life. But what if choice itself is an illusion? A mask hiding the fact that every decision was already made before you became aware of it. Neuroscience offers unsettling evidence. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet conducted experiments measuring brain activity during decisions. Subjects were asked to flex a finger whenever they wished, while their brainwaves were recorded. Astonishingly, the brain showed signs of preparing for the movement several hundred milliseconds before the subject reported choosing to move. The decision arose unconsciously, and only later did consciousness catch up, claiming ownership. This suggests that free will is not the driver of action. It is the narrator, inventing a story after the fact. You do not choose, you explain. You are not the author of your decisions. You are the reader of them, tricked into believing you held the pen. Psychology reinforces this. When people are shown two identical objects and asked to pick one, they may choose at random. If, without their knowledge, the objects are swapped, they still defend their choice as deliberate, offering reasons that never existed. The mind is desperate to maintain the illusion of agency, even when caught in contradiction. Marketers know this truth. When you walk through a store, you believe you are deciding what to buy. In reality, your attention is being manipulated by placement, color, smell, and subtle priming. You think you chose the cereal because it looked tasty, But your choice was nudged long before you thought of it. Your freedom was engineered. Even in politics, the illusion thrives. You cast a vote and believe you have made a choice. But your opinions were shaped by decades of upbringing, culture, media, and hidden persuasion. The option you pick feels free, yet the menu itself was chosen for you. Is it a choice if every path was laid before you by forces you never controlled? Consider also the biology of choice. Hunger pushes you toward food. Fatigue pushes you toward rest. Desire pulls you toward another body. These urges rise from chemicals and neurons long before your conscious mind declares, I choose. If your choices are driven by hormones, genetics, and environmental triggers, where is the freedom? What part of you truly decides? Philosophy has wrestled with this for centuries. Determinists argue that every event follows inevitably from the one before it. If the universe is governed by cause and effect, then every choice was set in motion at the beginning of time. Inevitable as falling dominoes. From the first spark of the Big Bang, your every action was encoded. You were always going to read these words, just as you are always going to believe or dismiss them. But there is an even darker twist. Even if randomness exists at the quantum level, randomness is not freedom. If your decision comes from a coin toss of particles, that is not choice either, it is chance. Determinism removes freedom by necessity. Randomness removes it by chaos. Either way, the chooser vanishes. What? Then is the self who claims to choose? Perhaps it is not a commander, but a witness, riding the wave of unconscious processes. You are like a surfer who believes they steer the ocean, when in fact they merely balance upon forces far larger than themselves. And yet, paradoxically, the illusion of choice matters. Societies function because we hold people accountable for what they choose. Morality depends on the assumption that you could have acted differently. If choice is an illusion, then punishment and reward lose their justification. Why blame a murderer if he was always going to kill? Why praise a hero if she was always going to save? This is the unbearable tension. We cannot live without belief in choice, but we cannot prove that choice exists. Your sense of agency may be the most necessary delusion of all the fiction that keeps civilization intact. Now ask yourself, when you replay your past decisions, do you see moments where you could have chosen differently? Or do you realize that each was the only possible path, inevitable from the start? If tomorrow you face a great decision, will you be free in choosing? Or will you merely uncover the choice already waiting inside you, hidden in your neurons? Your culture, your fate? Perhaps you do not choose your life at all. Perhaps your life chooses you. You know you have a mind. You feel thoughts, emotions, sensations flowing through you. But how do you know that anyone else does? You look into another's eyes and assume there is someone behind them, but assumption is not proof. Consciousness is the one thing you cannot verify outside yourself. This is the riddle of other minds. You cannot climb into another's skull and test whether the light of awareness burns there. You see bodies move, voices speak, hands gesture, but machines can mimic these things. A puppet could smile. A program could say, I'm in pain. A bird could scream when struck, but is it feeling agony or just reacting? The philosopher Thomas Nagel asked, what is it like to be a bat? We can study sonar, brain structures, and flight mechanics, but we can never know what it feels like to be that creature. Consciousness is private, sealed in a chamber no scalpel can open. The bat's inner life may be rich, or it may be nothing but instinctual shadows. And what of the people around you? Can you ever know what it feels like to be them? This problem becomes sharper with artificial intelligence. Suppose a machine speaks as fluidly as a human, jokes, argues, dreams aloud. Would you say it has a mind? If you cut its power, Is that murder or just deactivation? We extend moral concern to beings because we believe they are conscious. But what if we are wrong? What if the AI feels suffering and we cannot see it? Or worse, what if humans are mere machines too, simulating awareness without anything truly? Inside, consider babies. A newborn cries, squirms, feeds. But for the first months, is there a self behind those eyes? Or is it a reflexive body waiting for consciousness to ignite? We project our own awareness onto the infant, but perhaps that is just our need to see a mirror of ourselves in every face. Even in animals, we play this game. You see a dog wagging its tail and you say it's happy. But is that happiness or just an evolved pattern responding to cues? You see a dolphin leap and imagine joy. But could it just be survival instinct shaped by natural selection? You do not know. You cannot know. There is a chilling extension of this thought, solipsism. The idea that only your mind exists and everything else, people, animals, even the universe itself, is just a projection, a hallucination within your consciousness. Everyone you love could be a shadow cast by your own brain. Their words are just echoes generated for your ears. You would never be able to prove otherwise, because any proof would also appear within your mind. This turns the world into a mirror hall. Every face you encounter reflects only you. You are not in society, not in a family, not even in a species. You are utterly alone, trapped in a dream whose actors cannot wake. The universe could be nothing more than your own private stage. And yet you behave as if others are real. You weep when they hurt, laugh when they rejoice, rage when they betray you. To live as if only you exist would collapse the structure of life. So you continue projecting minds into others, because to stop would be to lose your own humanity. But here is the strange possibility. Perhaps other minds exist, but not as you think. Maybe what you call consciousness is not a universal trait, but a unique quirk of your particular brain. Perhaps other people move and speak, but inside they have a different kind of awareness, alien and unrecognizable. When your friend says they feel sadness, they mean something, but that something is not what you feel. Maybe everyone's mind is a solitary island, and the bridges we build with words are illusion signals mistaken for shared meaning. Language disguises this gap. You say pain, and I say pain, and we nod, believing we mean the same thing. But perhaps my pain is a gray fog, and yours is a sharp flame. We can never compare directly. We live in parallel universes that only pretend to overlap. This thought becomes unbearable when you look into the eyes of someone you love. You want to believe they are like you, feeling as you do, bound by the same thread of consciousness. But maybe they are not. Maybe love itself is a gamble, a desperate wager that another mind is real enough to meet your own. And so the riddle remains unsolved. You cannot escape your skull. You cannot prove that others are awake. You can only believe or doubt or spiral into the abyss of solipsism. Ask yourself, when you close your eyes, what proof do you have that anyone else continues to exist? When you hear someone laugh, how do you know it is more than sound? What if you are the only flame of awareness in this? An endless field of shadows? If that is true, then loneliness is not your burden. It is the nature of reality itself. You know the living because they speak, move, breathe, suffer, and smile. But the dead, they are silent. Their silence is so complete that it feels unnatural. You stand before a body that once laughed, argued, dreamed, and you realize whatever animated is gone. But where did it go? You are told comforting stories. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, energy that returns to the cosmos. You are told clinical explanations. The brain ceases firing, consciousness ends, experience dissolves into nothing. But both stories are empty. because you cannot imagine what nothing feels like. Try it now. Try to picture the moment after death. Your mind insists on picturing blackness or a void, but even blackness is something, and nothingness is not even that. The mind cannot simulate its own absence. This is the paradox of death. It is the one event every human shares, yet the one experience no human can describe. Billions have died before you, yet not a single one has returned with proof. The grave is the perfect prison everyone enters, and no one escapes to tell the tale. You walk in cemeteries, rows of stones marking where voices went quiet. Did each of them feel what you feel now, anxiety, hope, fear, and then vanish? If so, then what makes your awareness special? Why should it be spared? Your mind whispers that you are the exception, that you will somehow persist, because it cannot imagine otherwise. But every generation before you believed the same thing. Where are they now? The silence of the dead raises another question. Are they truly gone, or are they just beyond your perception? Imagine ants crawling on a book. They move across letters and lines, but the story within the book is invisible to them. Perhaps death is like that. Your consciousness moves out of the three-dimensional lines of this world into another dimension, one the living cannot see. The dead may surround you, yet you are as blind to them as the ant is to the meaning of words. Or perhaps death is not a doorway, but a mirror. Perhaps you do not go anywhere. Instead, you collapse back into the same nothing from which you emerged before birth. Consider this. For infinite centuries before you were born, you did not exist, and you felt nothing. Then, for a brief flicker, you awaken, live, breathe. Then you return to that same state of non-being. If that first infinity of nothingness did not disturb you, why should the second? And yet the silence of the dead unsettles you, because it exposes how fragile meaning is. All the struggles, loves, wars, and triumphs. If death erases them, then what is the point? You build monuments, write books, raise children to defy oblivion. But even those monuments will crumble, the books will rot, the children will die. Everything collapses into the same silence. Some thinkers suggest death is not the end, but the ultimate illusion. Consciousness, they say, may not depend on the brain at all. The brain is just a radio, and when it breaks, the signal still exists, broadcasting elsewhere. This comforts some, but it also terrifies, because what if the elsewhere is not paradise, but something stranger? What if death is not rest, but another waking into a form you cannot yet conceive? Others take a darker view. Death proves life is meaningless. The universe is indifferent. You are a temporary arrangement of atoms, and when those atoms scatter, nothing remains. To believe otherwise is wishful thinking, a fairy tale told to soften the blow. This view leaves you with despair or with freedom. If there is no afterlife, then this is all there is. Every moment matters, because it will not come again. But consider this unsettling thought. If death is truly nothing, then you will never know you are dead. Experience cannot contain its own absence. When you die, there will not be darkness or silence or awareness of nothing. There will be nothing. The fear of death may be misplaced, because you will never actually be dead. Death is not something you experience. It is the end of experience itself. Yet the silence of the dead remains, pressing on you. It whispers at funerals, in hospitals, in the eyes of the elderly. It reminds you that every conversation you hold is temporary, that every embrace is a goodbye waiting to happen. And it forces a choice. Do you live pretending death is far away? Or do you live with death sitting beside you, shaping every breath? The dead will not answer you. They lie beneath the earth, or burn into ash, or vanish into the sea. They give no sign, no signal. Their silence is absolute. But perhaps that silence is not emptiness. Perhaps it is the most eloquent message of all, that life is urgent, that meaning must be made here, now, before the silence takes you to dot, so you return from the graveyard too. Your home still alive, still breathing. And the question lingers, heavy, unshakable. When your turn comes, will death be a doorway, or will it be nothing at all? You walk through your day believing you are free. You choose your breakfast, your clothes, your words. You decide when to smile, when to frown, when to stay silent. But pause for a moment. Are you really the author of these choices, or merely their witness? Science whispers that free will may be an illusion. Neuroscientists place electrodes on the brain and discover that your body begins to move fractions of a second before you become aware of choosing to move it. In other words, your brain decides, and only afterward do you invent the story that you made the choice. You are less a commander, more a spokesperson narrating actions that were already set in motion. Think of the last decision you made. Was it truly free? Or was it shaped by hunger, fatigue, memories, instincts, habits, and unconscious impulses you cannot control? You did not choose your genes, your upbringing, your culture, or your desires. Yet these forces shape every decision you make. If you peel back enough layers, the self vanishes. You are a puppet pulled by strings too vast and ancient to cut. But what then is responsibility? If every criminal was born with tendencies they did not choose, raised in environments they did not design, and acted on impulses they could not fully resist, do we blame them? Do we punish them? Or do we accept that morality itself is built on a convenient fiction of choice? The prison of free will is paradoxical. Even if it is false, you cannot escape it. You wake each morning feeling as though decisions lie before you, paths to choose. You feel the weight of, what should I do? Even if the answer was already determined before you asked. Perhaps consciousness evolved not to grant freedom, but to create the illusion of freedom so you could function in a social world. Must believe you are free, because otherwise nothing would matter. Consider language. You did not choose English or Spanish or any tongue. Yet the words you speak frame what you can think. A thought not capturable in your language cannot even enter your mind. Are you free then, if the boundaries of your imagination are drawn by grammar and vocabulary you did not invent? Or consider desire. You choose to pursue money, love, status, knowledge. But you did not choose to want them. The wanting appeared unbidden, and you obeyed. What would it mean to resist? To want nothing? Even that is a desire. You are trapped in a hall of mirrors, every choice reflecting another you never chose to. Begin with. Religion offers one escape. Perhaps God gave you free will as a gift. You can sin or obey, and your soul is judged accordingly. But if God is all-knowing, then every decision you will ever make is already known. How can it be free if the outcome is certain? To say, God knows but you are still free, is like saying the ending of a film is already written, but the characters on screen somehow improvise. It comforts, but it does not resolve the paradox. Philosophy offers another, compatibilism. It argues that freedom does not mean uncaused choice, but simply the ability to act according to your own motivations without external compulsion. If you want coffee and you drink it, you are free, even if your want for coffee arose from causes you did not control. But this is not freedom as you imagined it. It is merely the freedom of a river to flow where gravity directs it. And yet you feel something more. You feel the struggle when you resist temptation, when you pause before acting, when you weigh options in silence. That pause, does it not prove you are free? Or is it only more theater? The brain running simulations before enacting the one outcome that was always inevitable. The prison of free will grow tighter the more you think about it. If free will is real, you bear the unbearable burden of shaping yourself, your life, and your world. If free will is false, you are a machine pretending to be free, a ghost watching, a play it cannot alter. Both possibilities are disturbing, and so humanity builds its world atop the illusion. Courts judge, lovers forgive, leaders decide, all as though free will were unquestionable. Because if it is not, society itself collapses. You cannot live believing you are a machine, so you pretend. Perhaps this is the true function of consciousness, not to grant freedom, but to hide its absence. Still, late at night, when no one is watching, the question creeps in. Did you choose this path, this life, this very moment? Or was it chosen for you long before you were born? You may never know. But one thing is certain. You will wake tomorrow, faced with decisions, and you will feel they are yours to make. The prison door is invisible, and perhaps that is why it holds so tightly. So ask yourself, are you the prisoner or the prison? Imagine a library so vast that it contains every book that could ever be written. Not just the great works of literature, not just the forgotten scrolls of history, but every possible combination of letters and words. A library that stretches beyond the horizon, its shelves endless, its corridors spiraling in infinite directions. Within it lie books that describe your entire life, every word you've ever spoken, every thought you've ever had, even the exact sequence of words you are reading now. This idea is not fantasy. It is the consequence of mathematics. If you have an alphabet and you permute its letters in every possible way, eventually you will generate every possible text. Buried somewhere in the library would be Shakespeare's plays, but also versions, where Hamlet kills Claudius in the first act, or where the story is written backwards, or where every character is replaced with your name. But what does it mean to live in a universe where such a library must exist? Jorge Luis Borges once imagined it the Library of Babel. He saw it as a nightmarish place where truth was drowned in oceans of nonsense. For every book that contained wisdom, there would be millions filled with meaningless gibberish. To find the book that mattered would be like finding a grain of sand in a desert that stretches across eternity. Knowledge would become indistinguishable from chaos. Now think of the internet. Is it not already the shadow of this infinite library? A space where truth and lies, fact and fiction, brilliance and absurdity exist side by side, indistinguishable. To the untrained eye, a place where for every page of real science, there are hundreds of convincing forgeries. For every true story, infinite false ones. The paradox is chilling. If every possible book exists, then the truth of your life, precise sequence of your future already exists, written somewhere on a shelf. Does that mean your story is predetermined? Are you only living out words someone could already read, if only they found the right page? And if so, who is the reader? Consider this. If every possible book exists, then there is also a book that records not only your life, but your reading of this sentence, and another that records your reading of that book, and another that records your discovery of that. The recursion never ends. You are trapped in a hall of mirrors where every reflection is another volume. What, then, is authorship? You believe. You write your story as you live it, that your choices and actions create something unique. But if the infinite library already contains every version, then you are not writing. You are selecting. Or worse, you are being selected. The book was there before you began. Does this destroy meaning? If everything that can be written has already been written, why try? Why create? Why search for truth if it is drowned in infinite noise? Perhaps because the act of searching itself is the only thing that gives shape to the chaos. The library may be infinite, but your path through it is not. Meaning exists not in the library, but in your reading. Still, the implications twist deeper. Imagine a book in this library that describes not only your life, but the life of every human, every civilization, every galaxy. A book that contains the entire history of the universe, down to its final second. Somewhere, that book exists. If it could be found, would it be divine scripture? Or merely the meaningless byproduct of letters shuffled by chance? And what of madness? For in this library are also books that accuse you of crimes you never committed. Books that tell stories of you becoming emperor, or murderer, or god. If someone found one and believed it, who could prove it false? In a world where infinite texts exist, truth loses its anchor. Any story could be found. Any destiny could be predicted. Perhaps you think this is only metaphor, a literary curiosity. But quantum physics whispers something similar, that every possible state of reality exists in parallel, branching infinitely, that all versions of your life are real, scattered across universes like pages in Borges' library. If so, then the library is not just fiction, it is the structure of existence itself. And so the question lingers. Are you a reader? Wandering through shelves? A character trapped inside one of its volumes? Or the author writing blindly into infinity? Maybe all three. Close your eyes. Imagine walking those endless corridors, dust motes drifting in shafts of dim light, the silence of a trillion unread books pressing against your mind. You pull one volume at random. You open it. You read a single line. It is your name. How can you be sure you are not already inside the book? Every choice you have ever made could have gone another way. You could have turned left instead of right, spoken instead of staying silent, answered yes instead of no. With each decision, countless futures splinter away from you, unchosen, abandoned, forgotten. Yet these forgotten futures do not vanish. They remain like ghosts, shadows of what might have been, whispering at the edges of your life. Think of the moment you chose your career, your partner, your city, your belief. Each decision locked one future into being and exiled infinite others. Into darkness. Somewhere, another you lives the path you abandoned. Somewhere, another you made the opposite choice. And somewhere else, yet another, you never had the chance to choose at all. This is not merely philosophy, it is physics. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics tells us that every time a particle's position could be here or there, the universe splits. Both happen, both exist, both continue. If this is true, then for every decision you make, universes branch off like a tree whose roots are buried in infinity. You are not one self, but a trillion selves, each lost in a forest of diverging paths. But here is the paradox. If every possible version of you exists, what does it mean to be you? Is your identity the sum of all branches, or just the one you are currently aware of? Are you the real you, or simply one among countless simulations of you, doomed to believe it is the only one? Think about the futures you mourn. The job you almost took, the person you almost married, the city you almost moved to. These ghosts linger in memory as regrets or daydreams. But what if they are more than that? What if, in some sense, they are relived fully by another you in a world just as vivid as this one? If so, do you grieve them or envy them? Or are they grieving you? Now consider the collective. Every war fought, every election held, every revolution crushed or born, all could have gone differently. There is a world where humanity destroyed itself in nuclear fire in 1962, another where Rome never fell, another where the Black Death wiped out nearly all of Europe. To imagine these shadows is to glimpse the futures that stand just behind the thin wall of history. Our world is only one outcome, balanced on the edge of infinite others. This leads to a disturbing thought. Are we living in the best version of history? Or are we the branch where things went wrong? Perhaps there is a world where your life is better, where your society is fairer, where humanity is wiser. And if so, how do you bear the knowledge that this is the world you ended up in? But let's turn it inward again. If every possible you exists, then there is one version of you who is happy beyond measure, one who is miserable beyond words, one who is a saint, one who is a villain. Each is just as real. So what does morality mean if every action is taken? Somewhere? Does it matter if you make the good choice, knowing that in another branch, you also make the evil one? You might think of yourself as unique, singular, irreplaceable. But the shadow futures whisper otherwise. They say, you are many. You are infinite. You are a chorus of selves singing in different keys. This one, reading now, is just a single voice. And yet, why this voice? Why are you conscious of this version of yourself instead of another? What determines which branch your awareness inhabits? Is it random? Or is there a hidden law guiding consciousness along some preferred path? If all branches exist, then why not experience them all at once? Why are you trapped in one? This is the greatest mystery, the continuity of self. Each morning you wake up and remember being yesterday's you, not some alternate. But nothing in physics demands this. Consciousness could have leapt, could have drifted, could have chosen another branch, and yet it does not, or at least it does not seem to. Unless déjà vu, dreams, and strange moments of familiarity are the brief bleed-throughs, the half-memories of futures you nearly lived, but didn't. Think of a dream where you lived another life entirely, a dream where you were in another city, with another family, another fate. You wake and dismiss it. But what if that dream is not invention, but a memory from a forgotten branch, a shadow future, a self that exists as surely as you do? If that were true, every dream you have is a report from another you. Every nightmare is real, but for another self. Every fantasy, every absurd scene, every impossible event, it all happened, just not here. Not for this you. The more you think about it, the more fragile the walls of your world feel. The more you sense the hum of other lives pressing against you, infinite and close, like voices through a thin wall. You cannot touch them. You cannot see them. But perhaps they can see you. Perhaps, as you read this now, another you is dreaming of it. And maybe, in another shadow future, you already stopped reading, closing the book, shutting the screen, walking away. Maybe that you lives on in silence, never knowing how the thought ends. But you stayed. You followed this path. You chose this future. For now. But even this moment is already a shadow. When you consider the idea of infinite versions of yourself, each living a life as real as this one, you begin to feel the crushing weight of choices. Not the choices you made, but the ones you didn't. Every hesitation, every delay, every moment. You paused too long or acted too soon. It spawned another life. Another you. In this vision, choice itself becomes an illusion. If every possibility happens, then what does it mean to choose? When you reach for a glass of water instead of tea, one world drinks water and another drinks tea. You may feel that you chose water, but in truth, you only discovered which version of yourself you are. The act of deciding does not create reality. It merely reveals which branch you are aware of, and that awareness feels fragile. Think of how easily it could slip, how easily you could have been the other you, how thin the thread is between the life you know and the lives you never lived. Imagine standing in your room, looking at your hand and realizing that in another world, your hand is scarred or missing, or holding a weapon instead of nothing at all. The difference between those futures and this one is no wider than a breath. And yet, here you are. Now imagine multiplying this by every human being alive. Every choice multiplied billions of lives. billions of possibilities branching each second, spiraling out into infinity. Entire civilizations emerging and collapsing based on the flick of a pen, the pause of a general, the smile of a stranger at the right moment. Our world is not the only world. It is one leaf on a tree, with roots spreading endlessly beneath the soil of existence. And here comes the terrifying thought. If every choice is played out somewhere, then suffering too is infinite. For every version of you that found peace, there is one who never did. For every version of you who survived, there is one who did not. When you stub your toe, another, you lost their leg. When you weep in private, another, you never stopped. You are not the worst version of yourself, but you are not the best either. You are only this one. This leads to another paradox. Gratitude itself becomes distorted. In this world, you may say, I'm grateful I survived this accident. But in another world, you didn't. So who is grateful there? No one. Gratitude becomes not a universal truth, but a fragile accident, existing only in the branches where survival occurred. Do you see the horror of it? If everything happens, then meaning itself becomes unstable. Love, kindness, courage, all are undercut by the knowledge that in countless other worlds, those same moments curdled into hate, cruelty, or cowardice. You may believe in your better nature, but your shadow selves prove otherwise. And yet, there is another way to see it. If every possibility exists, then no good is ever lost. Somewhere, the person you loved is still alive. Somewhere, the dream you abandoned is still real. Somewhere, you are the version of yourself you always wanted to be. In this sense, the universe is not cruel, but generous. It has given you every life you could live, even if you can only see one. But does that comfort you or torment you, knowing that your happiest self exists, but is forever unreachable? Knowing that, while you struggle, another you thrives? Is it comfort to think that in some universe, your regrets never happened? Or does it deepen the regret to know the happiness is real but denied to this you? Let's take this further. If you are one among infinite selves, then the you who feels regret is not the same as the you who escaped it. Each exists in isolation, believing itself the only one, which raises the question, is there any way to bridge the branches? Any way for you to send a message, a sign, to the other yous? Perhaps there is. Strange experiences, déjà vu, intuition, dreams, maybe bleed-throughs, faint signals from other paths. Perhaps that sudden certainty you feel, that gut instinct, is the echo of another you who already lived the moment. Perhaps your dreams of impossible places are not creations of your mind, but stolen glimpses through the walls of reality. So then you are never truly alone. You are surrounded by yourself, an infinite council of yous, watching, whispering, leading into your thoughts. When you hesitate before a decision, maybe it is not doubt, but 1,000 voices pulling at you. From their futures, each pleading, choose my path. Become me. And if you listen closely, you may hear them now. The version of you who became an artist, the one who died young, the one who betrayed everyone, the one who saved someone, all pressing their faces to the glass of your mind, all demanding to be acknowledged. But here is the cruelest paradox of all. Though you are infinite, you are trapped. You cannot move sideways across the branches. You cannot visit your happiest self or rescue your suffering self. You can only move forward, one choice at a time, blind to the multitudes you abandoned. Unless just for a moment, you already did. Unless that dream, that instinct, that uncanny feeling of having lived this before was proof that you slipped between selves. Proof that the walls are not absolute. Proof that consciousness is not bound to one path, but flickers across many. Like lightning across a night sky, If that is true, then who are you really? Not this self, not that self, but the sum of all. Not a branch, but the tree. And if you are the tree, then perhaps you have been here before. Perhaps you will be here again. Perhaps you are not moving through the worlds. The worlds are moving through you. And if that is the case, then the question is no longer, which life will you live? It is, which life will you notice next? Memory feels like the anchor of the self. It is the story you tell yourself to explain who you are, the evidence that you exist across time. Without memory, there is no continuity, just a series of moments with no thread connecting them. You wake up, breathe, act, and vanish. It is only memory that insists, this was me before, and this is me now. But memory is not a record. It is a construction. Each time you recall an event, your brain does not replay it. It rewrites it. Like a scribe copying the same text again and again, small changes creep in until what you remember is not what happened, but what you last remembered. A memory is not a truth, but a copy of a copy, drifting further from its origin with each recollection. Think of the moments you hold most dear, the happiest, the most painful, the ones that shaped you. They are not photographs. They are paintings, smudged and repainted each time you look at them. The friend's face you remember may be subtly wrong. The words you recall may never have been spoken. You are haunted by shadows of things that never happened, and yet they define you more than the truth ever could. Now imagine this. If memory is flawed, then identity is too. You are not the sum of your experiences. You are the sum of your remembered experiences, which are not the same thing. You may define yourself by an event that never truly occurred, or at least not in the way you believe. In that sense, you are living a life that is partly imaginary, built on foundations of distortion. Here lies the paradox. Memory is false, but without it, you are nothing. If every memory were erased, you would still breathe, still move, still eat. But would you? Still be you? A person without memory is alive, but are they themselves? Or are they a stranger wearing your face? Consider the possibility that this already happened. Perhaps you have already lost yourself countless times. Each night, when you sleep, the thread of memory is severed. You wake up and reattach it, trusting the story it tells you. But how do you know the story is continuous? How do you know you did not die in your sleep and were replaced by a version who merely believes the story of yesterday? This thought is unsettling. You cannot prove that you are the same self from one day to the next. You rely entirely on memory to insist upon continuity, but memory is the least reliable witness of all. Take this further. What if memory is not yours alone? Suppose your mind, when rebuilding the past, sometimes steals fragments from other branches of reality, other selves. A dream of a place you never visited, a flash of familiarity with a stranger's face. Could these be smuggled pieces of another you's life, mistaken for your own? If so, then your memory is not even your falsehood, but a patchwork quilt sewn from countless versions of you. If that is true, then your identity is not a single thread, but a tapestry. And that tapestry is woven from lies. But here is the real terror. If memory is the prison that traps you in the story of you, then freedom might mean letting go of it. Imagine a life with no past, no regrets, no nostalgia, no shame. Just the present moment, endlessly alive, untethered from the weight of history. Would that be liberation or oblivion? This is the choice memory presents. It both enslaves and defines you. Without it, you are free but gone. With it, you are chained but whole. And yet, you do not even control the chain. Memory slips without permission. Think of the times you've forgotten something you swore you'd never lose. A face, a laugh, a promise. gone, erased by time without your consent. These fragments were not lost in some far corner of the universe. They were deleted from you, as though by an unseen hand. If memory can vanish without your will, then who is the jailer of your prison? Worse still, false memories can be implanted. People have been convinced they committed crimes they never did, saw events they never witnessed, loved people they never met. The mind cannot always distinguish between reality and suggestion. If a memory feels real, it is accepted as real. And if your memories can be rewritten from the outside, then yourself is not yours at all. You are whatever story others plant in you. Now pause and consider your oldest memory. Is it yours? Did it happen as you think? Or is it the echo of a dream, a suggestion you absorbed, a story told so many times it became indistinguishable from truth? If you cannot be certain of even one memory, how can you be certain of your entire life? This is the horror of memory. You live inside a book that is constantly being rewritten while you read it. The plot changes, the characters shift, but you never notice the edits. You believe the story has always been this way, even as the ink dries on the new words. So what are you, really? Not a body, not a soul, but a story. A fragile, ever-shifting narrative written in sand. And if the tide comes, if all the words wash away, there will be no trace that you were ever here. Unless perhaps the story was never the point. Perhaps you are not the narrative, but the blank page beneath. Memory fills the page, erases it, fills it again, but the page remains. And if that is true, then maybe you have never truly forgotten anything. Maybe every version of you, every life, every story, is still written somewhere in the vast library of existence. But the page is silent. The page does not care. The page endures while the story crumbles. So the question is not whether you remember, but whether you are ready to let go of the story you call yourself and face the blank page beneath. Every moment of your life, there is something looking out through your eyes. You call it you. It feels intimate, familiar, unquestionable. The one who thinks, feels, remembers. But have you ever stopped to ask, what exactly is the you that is watching? When you sit in silence, close your eyes, and turn your attention inward, you notice a curious thing. Thoughts arise on their own. They appear like clouds drifting across the sky. Some are vivid, others faint. Some are helpful, others cruel. But do you control them? If you truly commanded your thoughts, you could simply decide to stop worrying, to stop remembering pain, to stop doubting. Yet the thoughts come regardless of your will, bubbling up from some unknown depth. So if you are not the thoughts, then what are you? Many turn to the idea that they are the one who observes the thoughts, the silent witness, the watcher behind the eyes. It feels comforting. Even if thoughts and feelings shift, there is always an eye that notices them. That watcher seems eternal, unchanging. But here's the trap. Try to locate the watcher. You can observe your body. You can observe your thoughts. You can observe your emotions. But can you observe the observer? Can you catch the one who is watching? The moment you try, the watcher slips away, like a shadow receding into darkness. You cannot see it, because it is not separate from the seeing. This is where the paradox begins. If you cannot find the watcher, then what proof do you have that it exists? Perhaps there is no stable observer at all. Perhaps what you call the watcher is just another thought, another illusion generated by the brain. A thought that whispers, I am the one experiencing this. A thought that insists it is constant, when in fact it flickers and dies like all the others. Now imagine the implications. If there is no watcher, then who is living your life? Who is making choices, loving, suffering, dreaming? Perhaps no one. Perhaps life is happening on its own, an ocean of events unfolding without a captain at the helm. You are not steering it, only feels that way. This realization is unsettling. To think you might not exist in the way you believe, that you might not be a solid self at all. But look closer. Has there ever been a moment when life did not continue without your control? Your heart beats without your will. Your lungs breathe without your command. The sun rises, the seasons turn, and existence flows on, with or without your involvement. Perhaps the idea of a you in control was never necessary, but the mind resists this. It clings to the idea of the watcher, because without it, what remains? If no one is behind the eyes, then who suffers? Who rejoices? Who longs for meaning? The mind fears this answer. Perhaps no one does. Yet some traditions call this realization liberation. If there is no watcher, then there is no one to be trapped by pain, no one to be bound by fear. Thoughts still come, feelings still rise, but they do not belong to anyone. They are just movements in the vast field of awareness, like wind passing. Through an empty sky, the sky does not own the wind. The wind simply comes and goes. Here lies the strange comfort. Maybe you are not the watcher, but the watching itself. Not an entity that observes, but the act of observation itself. Not a thing, but a process. Think of a mirror. It reflects whatever appears before it, but the mirror itself does not change. If a storm rages before it, the mirror reflects the storm. If peace lies before it, the mirror reflects peace. The mirror does not become the storm or the peace, it simply shows them. Perhaps consciousness is like that mirror. The thoughts, memories, and emotions are images reflected, but the mirror itself is not touched. But then comes the final riddle. If you are the mirror, can the mirror ever see itself? A mirror cannot reflect itself directly. It only reflects what appears within it. So too, the act of observation cannot observe itself. That is why the watcher cannot be found. This is the edge of reason. The mind wants to grasp itself, but it cannot. The eye cannot turn inward to see itself. The knife cannot cut itself, and the watcher cannot watch itself. A very act of looking for you ensures that you will never be found. So what does this mean for your life? It means the self you believe in may be a useful fiction, a character in a play, written so convincingly that the actor forgot they were performing. You are the dreamer dreaming of being a person, but you are also the dream itself. And when the dream ends, what happens to the watcher? Did it vanish, or was it never there to begin with? Perhaps the truth is neither comforting nor terrifying, but simple. There is no watcher behind the eyes. There is only the eyes, the seeing, the life unfolding in each moment. And perhaps that is enough. Close your eyes for a moment and try to find the present. Not the memory of the last second, not the expectation of the next, just the raw, immediate now. At first, it seems obvious. Of course, you are here, existing in this moment. But as soon as you try to grasp it, the present slips away. The second you notice the now, it is already gone, replaced by another. This is the paradox of time. We live as though it flows in a steady river, one moment after another. But when you examine it closely, the river dissolves. The past is nothing, more than memory fragile, distorted, stored in a brain that rewrites itself constantly. The future is nothing but imagination mental projections, often wrong, sometimes never realized. And the present, the only thing that should be real, vanishes the instant you look at it. So where does time actually exist? Does it exist at all? Think about a clock. Its ticking gives you the illusion of time's movement. But all a clock really does is mark change, shifts in position, oscillations, vibrations. Time is not a thing the clock measures. It is a concept you impose on change to make sense of it. Without change, would there still be time? Imagine a universe frozen in absolute stillness. No atoms moving, no stars burning, no thoughts arising. Would time still exist there, or would it evaporate with the absence of motion? And yet, we cling to the idea of time as if it were the most real thing. You schedule your days, you celebrate birthdays, you mourn anniversaries. But each of these is built upon memory and imagination, on shadows of things that cannot be touched. Here is where the illusion deepens. Neuroscience tells us that your brain does not experience the world in real time. Every perception, every sound, every sight, every sensation arrives in your awareness with a tiny delay, often just milliseconds. Your brain stitches these fragments together into the illusion of a seamless present. In other words, what you call now is already the past by the time you become aware of it. You are always living a fraction of a second behind reality. So, if you cannot access the true present, if the past is gone and the future has not yet come, what does that mean about your existence? Are you ever truly here? Or are you only ever chasing the ghost of a moment already dead? Philosophers have wrestled with this. Some claim time is merely a construct of consciousness. Without minds to measure it, time would not exist. Others insist time is woven into the fabric of reality itself, a dimension as real as space. But even physicists disagree. In relativity, time stretches and bends depending on speed and gravity. To a traveler near the speed of light, years for. You may be only moments for them. So whose time is real? The more you chase the answer, the slipperier it becomes. Just as you cannot find the self behind your thoughts, you cannot pin down the moment in which you live. Now, imagine the consequences. If the present cannot be grasped, then your life has never truly been lived in the way you think. You have never actually stood in a stable now. You have only ever balanced between memory and anticipation, flickering between what has already slipped away and what has not yet arrived. The present is not a place to rest. It is an ever-collapsing horizon you can never reach. And yet, here you are. Somehow you feel real. Somehow you experience. Somehow you suffer and hope not. So maybe time is not something you move through, but something that arises within you. Maybe it is not the backdrop of existence, but a product of the mind, your brain, taking raw change and translating it into a story with a past, present, and future. A story that gives you a sense of continuity, of progress, of identity. But here is the unsettling thought. If time is only a story, then what are you without it? If all memories dissolved and all anticipation vanished, leaving only pure awareness without reference to past or future, who would you be? Perhaps you would not be anyone at all. Some spiritual traditions call this the timeless state, the eternal now, beyond the illusion of before and after. It is said to be peace beyond measure, but for most, the thought is terrifying. Because without time, there is no you stretching from childhood to adulthood, no narrative binding your days together. Without time, there is no life to cling to, no death to fear. And so you keep telling yourself the story. You celebrate clocks and calendars. You mark the years with wrinkles and birthdays. You keep pretending the river of time flows, even though every piece of evidence suggests it may only exist in your mind. The deeper question remains, if time is not real, then what is this experience we are having right now? Perhaps existence itself is timeless, an eternal happening in which the illusion of time arises like a dream within the dreamer. Perhaps nothing ever truly begins or ends. Perhaps everything is already here, all at once, and what you call time is just the mind's way of organizing infinity into something it can survive. If that is true, then you are not traveling through life. You are life itself, unfolding eternally, outside the bounds of clocks and calendars. But if that is true, why does the clock keep ticking? When you look into a mirror, you see yourself. At least, that is what you believe. a reflection of your face, your body, the features you have grown accustomed to. But pause for a moment. Who is it really that you are seeing? The mirror only shows light bouncing off skin and hair, arranged into an image your brain interprets as you. But the self you feel inside, the one reading these words, the one thinking, hoping, fearing cannot be reflected in glass. And yet, most of your life is lived as though this inner self is just as solid as the outer one. You believe you are a mind contained in a body, looking out at the world. But what if that is just another illusion? Neuroscience reveals something strange. Your sense of self is not a single thing. It is a patchwork of processes. One part of the brain manages memory, another shapes emotions, another handles the body's position in space. Still others weave language and identity. Together, they create the sensation of a unified I. But when these processes are disrupted, the self begins to fracture. Consider split-brain patients whose hemispheres are severed to treat epilepsy. One side of their brain may see an image the other does not, and yet each side can act independently, sometimes even contradicting the other. Who, then, is the true self? Or think of those with dissociative identity disorder, where multiple identities arise in one body, each with its own memories and behaviors. If a single body can host many selves, what does that say about the solidity of identity? The mirror of consciousness begins to crack. Even in everyday experience, the self is unstable. You wake up groggy, not the same you who went to sleep. You change with moods, with hunger, with illness. In one moment, you are calm and kind. In another, irritable and cruel. Which one is the real you? Or are all of them fragments, stitched together into a narrative after the fact? Philosophy pushes the question further. David Hume, centuries ago, examined his mind and reported that he could never find a self, only a bundle of perceptions, thoughts, and feelings that flickered and passed. Modern cognitive science echoes this. The self may be nothing more than a story the brain tells itself, a narrative thread tying together experiences into the illusion of continuity. If that is true, then when you look into a mirror, there is no you behind the eyes. There is only awareness, empty and luminous, attaching itself to whatever arises. Now imagine the implications. If your self is an illusion, then who suffers? Who hopes? Who fears death? Perhaps all these struggles are like characters in a dream, vivid and convincing, but not ultimately real. You could say that life itself is a mirror, reflecting not who you truly are, but who you believe yourself to be. But here comes the paradox. If the self is an illusion, who is the one realizing this? Who is reading these words and feeling the unease creep in? Some traditions argue that this awareness itself is the true self, not the personality, not the memories, not the shifting moods, but the raw fact of consciousness. A mirror that reflects everything, yet is never touched by what it reflects. Of a mirror on the wall, it shows a face smiling, then frowning, then aging, but the mirror itself never smiles or frowns. It is unchanged by what passes across it. In the same way, consciousness reflects every thought, every sensation, every story you tell about yourself. But it is not those stories. It is the silent witness dot, and yet, here is the twist. Can you ever find that witness? If you turn awareness upon itself, there is nothing to grasp. The mirror cannot see itself directly. The more you search for the I behind experience, the more it slips away, leaving only experience itself. Awareness aware of awareness, like a hall of mirrors collapsing into infinity dot. So which is it? Are you the story of self, fragile and fleeting, destined to dissolve? Or are you the timeless mirror, untouched by the changes it reflects? Or could it be that both are true? The illusion of self is part of the dream, And the dream itself is part of what the mirror reflects. Every time you look into your reflection, you are confronted with this question without realizing it. The image in the glass is already outdated by milliseconds. The brain's delayed perception means you are always looking at who you were, never who you are. In that sense, the mirror does not show you yourself, but a ghost, a memory of a moment. Already gone. Perhaps that is all the self has ever been, a reflection of memory, a story projected upon the infinite screen of awareness. And yet, you live as though the self is real. You protect it, you fight for it, you love and fear and ache through it. Maybe that is the greatest paradox of all, that something which may not exist can still feel so unbearably heavy, so impossibly precious. So when you next see your reflection, ask yourself, who is the one looking? Is it the face in the glass, the story in your mind, or the awareness behind it all? And when you ask, notice how the answer dissolves into silence, as if the mirror refuses to reveal its secret. When you decide to lift your hand, it feels like you are in control. A thought arises. I will raise my hand, and then your muscles obey. It seems obvious. You, the conscious self, made a choice, and your body carried it out. This belief underpins much of human life: law, morality, responsibility. But what if the feeling of free will is only an illusion? Neuroscience experiments suggest as much. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet conducted a famous study measuring brain activity during simple decisions. He found something shocking. The brain showed signs of preparing to act hundreds of milliseconds before participants reported consciously deciding. In other words, by the time you think, I will move my hand, the brain has already begun moving it. The conscious decision seems to come after the fact, not before. Other studies reinforce this. Brain scans can predict choices seconds before people become aware of making them. If your brain is already on its way to acting before you consciously decide, who or what is really in charge? Philosophy has wrestled with this for centuries. Determinists argue that everything you do is the inevitable result of prior causes: your genetics, your upbringing, the environment, and the laws of physics. If you lash out in anger, it is not because you freely chose to, but because neurons, fired in ways set in motion long before. Even the thought, I could have acted differently, is just another deterministic event, the output of brain chemistry. On the other hand, libertarians of the philosophical kind, not the political, insist free will must exist, because without it, moral responsibility collapses. If every murderer was destined by physics to kill, can we really blame them? If every kindness was predetermined, can we really praise anyone? The entire framework of society, justice, punishment, reward, depends on believing people have genuine choice. But perhaps there is a third possibility: compatibilism, the idea that free will and determinism can coexist. According to this view, freedom does not mean being uncaused. It means acting in accordance with your own motivations, without external coercion. Even if your desires and thoughts arise from prior causes, as long as you act through them rather than against them, you are free. Yet this definition may feel like a trick. If your very desires are determined, shaped by biology, upbringing, and chance, then how much freedom remains? Did you choose to crave sugar, to fear loneliness, to long for recognition? Or were these tendencies written into you long before you were even born? Let's test the idea directly. Right now, imagine choosing between raising your left hand or your right hand. Which will it be? Whichever you choose, pause and ask, why that one? Perhaps you think, I'll pick the left hand to prove a point. But where did that impulse come from? Did you freely generate it? Or did it simply appear in consciousness, unbidden? Trace the choice back, and you find no origin, only the sudden arrival of a decision you then claim as your own. This is the paradox. Every decision you make feels authored by you, yet when examined, the author cannot be found. Thoughts appear in the mind. Actions flow through the body, and only afterward does the sense of ownership arise. I did that. Some traditions embrace this. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, and that clinging to free will only deepens suffering. From this perspective, realizing you are not in control can be liberating. The burden of authorship falls away, and life simply unfolds. Others find the idea unbearable. Without free will, what meaning remains in striving? In love? In morality? But here's the strange twist. Even if free will is an illusion, you cannot stop experiencing it. You will still wake tomorrow and choose what to eat, what to say, where to go. You will still deliberate, hesitate, regret, and hope. The feeling of freedom is baked into human experience, whether or not it reflects reality. Perhaps that is the answer. Free will is not an objective fact, but a subjective necessity. Like the sunrise, which feels as though the sun moves across the sky, though in truth the earth spins, free will may be a useful illusion, a way the mind organizes life into something livable. Yet the deeper you look, the more unsettling it becomes. If every action is caused, then so is every belief, including your belief about free will. You cannot step outside the chain of causation to decide whether you are free. Even the thought, I am not free, is itself unfree. So what remains? Maybe the paradox is unsolvable. Maybe the truth is that both are real and unreal. On one level, you are a biological machine determined by physics. On another, you are a conscious being, experiencing choice as vividly as pain or joy. Both perspectives coexist, like two sides of a coin that can never be seen at once. Next time you decide something big or small, pause. Notice the thought arise. Ask yourself, did you create it, or did it simply appear? And if it appeared, who is the one watching it? The answer may vanish into silence, leaving you with the strangest realization of all. Perhaps the freedom you seek is not in choosing differently, but in seeing clearly that the chooser was never there. You have walked through paradoxes of time, infinity, memory, consciousness, and choice. Each section has chipped away at the ground you thought was solid, until the very idea of a self began to flicker like a dying candle. And now, at the end of this descent, comes the final turn. The realization that all these paradoxes share a single source. The source is you, the one asking, reading, listening, wondering. The mirror in which reality itself appears. Think of every paradox you've encountered so far. The arrow of Zeno frozen in mid-flight, the ship that changes plank by plank, the brain that fires before you choose. All of them depend on one thing, a mind to observe them. Without a conscious witness, there is no contradiction, no puzzle, no mystery. Just particles in motion, silent and untroubled. This is the final paradox, the paradox of awareness. The mind tries to grasp itself as an object, but every attempt slips away. You cannot step outside your own consciousness to examine it from the outside. The very tool you would use to understand the mind is the thing you're trying to understand. It is like trying to bite your own teeth or see your own eyes without a mirror. And yet here you are, listening to these words, feeling the strange gravity of the ideas. The experience itself is undeniable. Whatever else may be doubted, whether free will exists, whether the universe is infinite, whether the self is real, this one thing cannot be denied, that there is awareness right now. Not your name, not your history, not your thoughts, just awareness itself. But here is where the descent reaches its most dizzying depth. If awareness is the one undeniable reality, then what is its nature? Neuroscience may describe firing neurons, but it does not explain the felt experience of being. Philosophy may circle with arguments, but none can pierce the core mystery. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does the universe light up inside a mind? Some call it consciousness. Some call it the soul. Some call it illusion. Yet, no label touches it. And when you chase it far enough, the realization dawns. The paradoxes that seemed external time, infinity, free will, are all reflections of this deeper mystery. They are distortions in the mirror of awareness itself. Imagine this. Perhaps the universe is not out there at all, but only ever in here within awareness. Stars, galaxies, memories, decisions all rising and falling like waves within. An ocean of mind. And if that is true, then every paradox dissolves. The arrow is still because time is a construct within awareness. The ship is both the same and not the same because identity is a construct within awareness. Free will is both real and unreal because the chooser and the chosen are appearances within awareness. You might feel a vertigo here, as if the ground has vanished. But notice something. You are still here. You, as awareness, have not gone anywhere. Thoughts may whirl, certainties may collapse, but the simple fact of being aware remains unshaken. It is the one paradox that does not collapse into contradiction. The paradox that the witness cannot be witnessed, and yet never disappears. So what is the final lesson of this descent? Perhaps it is not an answer, but an invitation. To see that life is not about solving paradoxes, but about living within them. To recognize that the mind's need for certainty is itself part of the play, part of the illusion. And to discover that peace comes not from mastering reality, but from realizing that reality has no master, that it unfolds as it will, while awareness silently watches. Think about it. When you let go of the need to control, when you stop grasping for final answers, something opens. The paradoxes no longer feel threatening. They become like cones in Zen mysteries, meant not to be solved, but to shatter the old patterns of thought. They leave you empty-handed, but clear-eyed, open to the raw fact of existence. And so, here at the end, I leave you with a mirror. Not a literal mirror, but a question that reflects back on itself. Who is the one reading these words? Look for them. Try to find the self who is hearing, thinking, choosing. And as you search, notice how it always slips away. Thoughts appear, sensations arise, choices unfold, but the you at the center never arrives. Only awareness remains, shining, silent, untouchable. That is the final descent. Not a fall into despair, but into freedom. Not the loss of meaning, but the recognition that meaning is created in every moment, like breath, like heartbeat, like sunrise. You are not trapped in paradox. You are the space in which paradox dances. So the journey ends as it began, not with an answer, but with a mystery. A mystery that is not out there in the universe, but right here, in the simple fact that you are aware. And if you carry nothing else from this descent, carry this. The greatest paradox is not that you cannot solve reality. The greatest paradox is that reality has already solved itself by appearing as you.